All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. As always, I am your host, Brandis P. Bonos, and I have a big show coming up for you guys today. I hope you guys are very excited. So, today I'm going to be reacting to the Steven Crowder and Nick Fuentes debate, and I think you can actually legitimately call it a debate because unlike most of the other interviews that Nick has been doing on this interview circuit, this actually was contentious. This debate, this discussion he had with Steven Crowder was actually contentious. And I thought this was interesting because I was going to react to either the Bradley Martin, the Tommy G, or the Alex Jones interview that were posted yesterday on Nick's Rumble account, but I decided against it because a lot of these interviews that he's been doing, they're really more just discussions. A lot of it is background. A lot of it is just general knowledge, general opinion on, the climate of right-wing politics right now, but they're not actually debating him on his beliefs. They're not actually scrutinizing his beliefs. To his credit, Steven Crowder actually did scrutinize Fuentes' beliefs. A lot of these interviews, Tommy G, Tucker Carlson, I guess Candace Owens, that one was really contentious, but that really wasn't an interesting interview. It was a lot of drama. Dave Smith, anti-Semitism, Jew hate, we don't really want to talk about that. That's not interesting. And you guys already know I'm a Fuentes supporter. I watch his stream virtually every night. But I have my own disagreements with him as well. And I like the fact that Steven Crowder actually took the time to address the things that Nick Fuentes has been saying. Because the thing is, right, the media has been treating Fuentes like he's some kind of supervillain. He's some kind of evil supervillain, this nefarious actor who has sinister intentions to destroy the United States and install a Catholic theocracy. And he wants to genocide all Jews. And it's like, no, that's actually not Fuentes. He's a political live streamer. And he's amassed a large following because people agree with the things that he says. And he says a lot of things that are correct. And he hits the nail on the head and he strikes a chord with a lot of people in right-wing politics who are dissatisfied with the current status quo and with the Trump administration. So, I think it's necessary for people to actually debate Nick Fuentes as opposed to try and cast him as this evil supervillain and just give the guy a fair hearing. Now, I actually like this debate between Crowder and Fuentes because there's actually a lot to get into. There's a lot of material here. It's different than, the Bradley Martin interview or whatever, which I was going to react to, but I decided against it because, it's just, we want something contentious. We want something substantive, something back and forth. We don't want to hear Nick say the same thing he said on the past 20 interviews about Israel, Jews, the GOP, the Trump administration, immigration, demographic change. We want to hear something different. We want to hear an actual back and forth. So I'm going to pull up the debate between Crowder and Fuentes. Okay, so we're going to start the video here, or we're going to start the reaction here. The reason I skipped the first 37 minutes of this was because all of it was just, none of it was talking about Fuentes' actual beliefs. They were talking about Casey Dillon and, Daily Wire and gatekeeping in the conservative movement from Ben Shapiro and Daily Wire, contracts, the Groypers going after Steven Crowder. So all that stuff it's biography, it's, history and stuff like that. It's not interesting. We want to actually get into their beliefs and figure out what they actually agree and disagree on. So we're going to start here. The first question that Crowder asks Fuentes is in regards to his political ideology and what America First is. So we're going to start here.
America first. I identify as a conservative, as a nationalist. I wear that since it became a pejorative. I thought that was sort of a default thing for America. So you wouldn't hear me saying nationalist until people were like, nationalist means you're a supremacist. I'm like, well, okay, well then I'm a nationalist. Now I have to claim it because of course I want America to do best. Since you, I know, are very clearly America first, let me ask you, what do you love most about America?
Well, I love that we're a superpower. I love that because I really do believe that, when you look at the history of Western civilization, I love the idea of an empire. I love the idea of the Roman Empire. the Spanish Empire, British Empire. And I love the idea that we just have this crazy productive capacity, huge population, huge resources. I like the power of America. That's something I've really been liking a lot lately.
Okay. And of course, we don't want to take that for granted. Obviously, the power of America, like that switches in a nanosecond as far as history. Is there anything else that stands out to you aside from the power? I mean, if not, we can move on to the next.
Yeah, I mean, I love political liberty. I like the Constitution. I like our culture. I like that we're like a pan-European empire. I like that, because when you compare us to Europe, you look at Europe and it's sort of petty and small, and they're squabbling and they're fighting, between these little towns and villages. And I like that there's just this sense of nationhood in America between European Christian people and other people too, of course. But for the most of our history, it was mostly the Europeans. But,
yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of things I like about America.
Yeah, that's where I would already disagree with you because I was raised in Quebec, which is much more European. And I think
True.
Europe kind of sucks. I'm not a big...
Why?
Well, because there's far less freedom. I mean, in Quebec and a lot of these European nations, they had an enforced denominational form of Christianity, which didn't work out. That breeds atheists.
It's funny. Just notice how it starts out very friendly, and then it gets really contentious later. So I don't want to bore you guys with all this, but it is interesting just witnessing the transition in real time, how it goes from being very friendly. You see Nick's facial expressions. He's smiling a lot. He's very cordial. And then it gets pretty heated. So... And we're gonna examine that entire transition, but just pay attention. It's very interesting. By the way, what Steven Crowder's doing here is he's disarming. He's trying to disarm Fuentes by being friendly, by being agreeable, and then once he disarms him, lowers his guard a bit, then he's gonna start, pressing him with real questions about his actual beliefs.
I believe that Quebec is possibly the most unchurched population in the industrialized or Western world, even though Catholicism was a state-enforced, provincially enforced denomination. I think we're better than Europe. That's why we left. But I do understand that the founders, obviously, were largely white, Christian, European. I mean, Protestant, obviously. I know you and I, we'll quibble about that, but that
Sure.
is the basis here.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that Catholics aren't welcome. But let me ask you, what about the founding, founding fathers? Is that something? Because I know you have opinions kind of on both sides of that, and I think they're more nuanced. But is that a big part of what you like?
I love the founding fathers. I think they're brilliant. I love George Washington. I love Hamilton. I like John Adams. I think they're remarkable people. So yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Okay. Political liberty. Can you kind of explain, I guess, that a little bit? Because that's where I know you've said that you differ with conservatives, and I don't want to mischaracterize you. I understand you've said that you're not "quote unquote" conservative. That's not you
Right.
identify as America first. So political liberty, what does that mean?
I would say I'm more reactionary than conservative. That's why I don't
Okay.
mean when I say I'm not conservative that I'm something else. And so, as far as political liberty goes, I like that in our country we have a generally permissive climate. I think, of course, that's gone too far in some ways. But I do like that we have a free press. I like that we have the right to own guns. I am a capitalist. I'm not an ideological free market person, but I like that we have private property. I like we can own what we earn. And on some level, I like that we have a republic. I'm very into the idea that we have Republican sovereignty. That we have rights. They're protected by God. The Constitution respects that also. Okay. And I would say, because I could kind of see maybe, I don't know if you're comfortable with this, if I could go a little further here.
Sure. I mean, look, go wherever you want. And as long as you're comfortable with me disagreeing and understanding that it's meant to be fair, but I'll let you know where I do.
Yeah, because maybe I could see where you're going with this. I'm really not like a totalitarian. I don't want a police state, to the extent that people say these things about me, like you're a fascist, you're a communist, or a socialist. I'm very much not in favor of that sort of thing. I just think that, in the past 30 years, we've gone a little bit too far in the other direction. That's all.
No, and I wouldn't disagree with that last part, by the way. For example, I think it's very reasonable to say, you know what, maybe OnlyFans isn't a good thing. When you have libertarians going, oh yeah, if they ask for identification to prove you're of age to get pornography, the next thing you know, they're going to take your guns away. I'm like, yeah, I think that being 18 to get hardcore pornography kind of makes sense. So if addressing the hardcore libertarian sort of ideology, I would agree. If it goes towards like a theocracy or something like that, which I know you've discussed, I would disagree. And look, I want to play this because, of course, everyone's going to ask me to ask you this about.
This is where it gets interesting. He starts getting into Stalin, and I'll give you guys my thoughts on that in a second. I'm going to let the clip play out, but this is where things start to get interesting.
The Tucker Stalin clip. So what I want to do is play it. And then I know that you've already explained it more recently. I want to play a longer clip in context and then give you the floor, because otherwise people say, why did he softball him and not ask about Stalin? Here's the clip for those who haven't seen it from Tucker Carlson.
So it was like late December. It's actually funny. It was December 18th. I remember because that's an important date to me. And it's Joseph Stalin's birthday.
Oh.
I'm a fan.
You're a fan of Stalin's?
Mm-hmm. Always an admirer, but we don't need to go into that, I guess.
Well, that's okay. Let's get back. We'll circle back to that.
It's shocking that Tucker Fuentes interview is only a month and a few days old. It is December 3rd. That interview came out October 27th. It feels like it's been a lifetime since that interview came out, with how fast politics moves and just how much stuff happens. And it just felt like, I remember on Twitter, anybody who was up on game knows the first 1-2 weeks after that interview came out, it was like the whole world was on fire. Like everything was being burned down. I specifically remember it. Like all the Israel firsters, the berserkers on Twitter crashing out about Tucker, fascism, Adolf Hitler, Nazism, Mark Levin, Laura Loomer, Ben Shapiro, Josh Hammer, all the Nick Fuentes clips from 8, 9, 10 years ago coming out. Like, the crash out was crazy. Kevin Roberts getting canceled, having to apologize. And mind you, this was only like a little over a month ago. It hasn't even been like 5 weeks. It's crazy how fast time moves, man. Crazy. Anyways.
And then he called you a gay fed. No, I'm kidding, but pretty much that's what he did. People are mad at him for softballing. I think he didn't. I think that would be fair to press. I just think he was fundamentally dishonest in a lot of ways, because the second you left, it was a different Tucker again. Is that a fair assessment? I was kind of surprised.
Yeah, 100%. And, I had the same experience with Candace. I went out there because him and I had beef. Me and Tucker had been privately and then publicly beefing for years. And, he called me on the phone over the summer, and we talked a little bit, and then somebody arranged, Alex Jones was a part of it, and somebody else kind of put this together. I went out.
Wait.
Dinner for
Alex
3 hours.
Jones was the mediator?
He was.
You do kiss and make up. All right, come on, this is enough. I mean, I can't imagine him being the middle ground, but okay.
He's a sweet guy, he's a
teddy bear
guy.
Yeah.
So he didn't want to see us fighting because he loves Tucker, he loves me. He kind of put it together for us, and so I go out there, we have dinner, we do the show, and at no point during the show or during the dinner was it really even contentious. Was there really even an explicit disagreement? We had some disagreements, but he kind of tried to avoid those. I don't think that he was very forceful or direct about those. And then I went on my show the next day and said, yeah, it was a great interview. I thought it was really nice, and we're on the same page now. And then every single interview that he has done since then, he doesn't say my name without calling me an anti-Semite. He's going and doing the circuit, and every show that he goes on, he says, Nick is really talented and this and that, but I don't agree with his anti-Semitism and Jew hatred. And I'm like, okay, so where was that during the dinner? Where was that during the show? I didn't hear that during the whole thing. I'm an anti-Semite now.
I mean, it's kind of clear Tucker Carlson, dad's in the CIA. You guys know all this already, but dad's in the CIA, comes from a wealthy family. He's been in the system, MSNBC. His holding company that gave the funds for the Tucker Carlson podcast, I think it's called Last Country Incorporated. That company received money from Rockbridge Network, which is associated with Peter Thiel and JD Vance. Well, technically what happened was 1789 Capital, which was created at a Mar-a-Lago summit in 2022. Effectively what happened was Rockbridge Network is this media conglomerate that was created by, I believe, Chris Buskirk, who's a political strategist, J.D. Vance, and Don Trump Jr., but they got money to start Rockbridge Network from Peter Thiel. And this was in 2019. In 2022, there was a summit in Mar-a-Lago, and I believe Rebecca Mercer was there. There was some Iranian guy who was there. Don Trump Jr. was there. Who else was there? J.D. Vance was there. And at this summit meeting in Mar-a-Lago in 2022, they formed a new capital firm called 1789 Capital. 1789 Capital effectively is a capital firm that seeds money to, conservative outlets, media publications, podcasts, all this kind of stuff to basically do propaganda or advocacy for this new tech right wing. And Tucker Carlson got money from 1789 Capital, which was created by Rockbridge Network. Rockbridge Network got money from Peter Thiel and J.D. Vance. So Tucker Carlson is plugged into this whole system, this whole matrix, and everybody knows his son works for Peter Thiel, or his son works for J.D. Vance. So we can never really fully trust Tucker Carlson because there's a conflict of interest. He can't, on one hand, alienate himself from this big machine that he's obviously in the middle of with the intelligence assets, with Rockbridge, with Peter Thiel, J.D. Vance. He can't alienate himself from all that by being too favorable towards a person like Nick Fuentes, who's seen as like this subterranean supervillain, Hitler-supporting anti-Semite, even after 10 years, and even after going through a year of rehab and all these podcasts. So we can never fully trust Tucker Carlson, in my estimation.
And I wish he would have brought that up during the discussion, because I would have loved to discuss that or to dispute that or whatever. But it's like you said, I got a completely different Tucker after the fact in all these other shows. He's going around and telling everybody, that like it's the making of a murderer.
Right.
Like I could see why people like him, even though he's
like
so awful.
Like you're the Averys. Yeah, you got them Jews there. Oh.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And Candace will make another show about that like 9 years later. Okay, so that's she did like something about making a murderer. I was like, what is this? Like, this is very late. Okay, but going back to that's the clip that people say, ask him about Stalin. And I would have, in Tucker's shoes, asked you about Stalin. Now, I've seen you on another show explain it more recently. Now, I can't play the whole clip because it'll be really long, but I want to play a longer one and then allow you to provide any missing context. I can't remember the name of this, something Danny D, Johnny G, play it.
Tommy G.
Tommy G, I was close.
I agree you have some hilarious moments, but there was a moment from the Tucker Carlson interview I wanted to ask you about.
Yeah.
You mentioned Stalin. You're a fan of his work?
Yes.
Was that serious or a joke?
That wasn't a joke. But, it's like anything else. I love history, and I love stories. And to me, Joseph Stalin is an extremely compelling figure. I would say more, you'd be surprised to hear this, than Hitler. Everybody pegs me as like a Hitler guy. I'll tell you, and I'm not saying this to pander, I'm not saying this, because I care about what you think of me. I really don't even know that much about Hitler. I never found Hitler to be that interesting. I think that there's narratives about Hitler that are interesting. In America, if you talk a certain way about certain issues, they say you're a Nazi, you're Hitler. So it's interesting in that way.
I don't believe that. I think he's playing that for the camera when he says he doesn't find Hitler that fascinating. I don't think he's being fully honest there. But, he has to do this thing where Coleman Hughes said this yesterday. He posted a video about Fuentes yesterday, and I watched it. I thought it was interesting. I don't fully agree with it, but basically he said there's two sides to Nick Fuentes. There's the podcast circuit Fuentes, and then there's the Rumble Nick Fuentes. The Rumble Nick Fuentes is explicit, unfiltered, can be extreme, very verbose. And then you have the podcast Nick Fuentes, which is very moderate, very agreeable, very respectful, very well-mannered. And he said the dichotomy or the juxtaposition between these two versions of Fuentes, it's almost as if they're two completely different people. And I don't think you can actually, I don't think Nick Fuentes, you know, say what you want. I don't think you can actually believe that he is not somewhat enticed or enthralled by Hitler as a figure. Um, at least partially. You can't deny that without giving him like an extreme, almost absurd amount of leeway. I think it's very clear he's fond of Hitler, and I feel like that's pretty much indisputable.
But for me, Stalin is the far more compelling figure. And I say that because, while everybody focuses on Hitler, Stalin is a person who takes Russia, which is the most backwards country in Europe at the beginning of the 20th century, serfs and peasants and just all around immiseration and poverty. He takes a country like this, and by the time he dies, it's a nuclear empire. It's a global superpower. It's like the most unbelievable story in the history of mankind. And so I don't think he's a good person. He's an evil person. He's one of the villains of history. But in terms of his effects, he's an effective ruler. And I think that's interesting.
Okay. Now that clip goes on, we'll make the link available. I don't want to do an interview where everyone's watching you watch you. But so with that, and I was asked about this on Piers Morgan. And I, again, asked to condemn, Stalin. I said, look, I don't know. He could have meant, and by the way, I don't know if you have a cold. I have a halls in my throat right now. I notice everyone's a little bit sniffly. I said, he could have been saying he's fascinated. Like, for example, I've been going down a rabbit hole of Stalin versus Trotsky, like how much they hated each other, which would seem odd to us because they're very similar. The spoiler alert, it's two assholes fighting. That's pretty much all it is. And I would be curious to ask him about that. So when people say disavow without having the full context, I think that's wrong. Now, that said, my question to you would be, I know that you have said we need a Catholic theocracy or a Christian theocracy. I've heard the word dictatorship, correct me if I'm wrong. So I would ask you, since the end point seems much more similar to where Stalin reached, just swap atheism for Catholicism or Christianity, would you be able to name, or is there any one thing that you think America, like concretely, should copy about Stalin's rule or methods to get there?
Not his methods, because like I said, he's an evil person, or a murderer, and genocidal, arguably with the famine. I mean, I think it's pretty clearly intentional that they were trying to kill all those people there. And so I want to make that clear. Sometimes I feel like it's almost childish, and I'm not saying that about this interview, but just in general, when people say, wait, but he was a bad guy, it's like, I know he's a bad guy. Like, I know he was evil. And I suppose the thing that I find maybe more compelling about Stalin as a ruler is the way that he industrialized the country. I'm very interested in this because that is, among the other things that I talk about, a very important problem in the country is that we're deindustrialized. Yeah. And what Stalin did, and I said that in that clip and in other clips too, he takes a country that has no industry. And he literally, and with brutal, evil methods that I don't replicate, I don't support that, but he does take the country and drag it into the 21st century. And he does that by bringing in heavy industry. The 5-year plans, the collectivization of the farms, it was about prioritizing heavy industry so that they could eventually build ships and planes and tanks and, the things that they needed to fight the war. So,
but it was about seizing industry. And it was about doing it by force. I mean, secret police, the party purges, the show trials. So if you say the industrialization of the country, how do you separate that from, the only methods were largely evil, or certainly his calling card methods, right? That's where people would say, okay, if you point to him as an example, is there anything worthy of emulating other than, because you could point to other countries that have industrialized, including the United States?
Well, I don't think that is necessary. I think because...
Okay, here, after this, they already played one clip, but they're going to start getting into the clips. This is where they start butting heads. And I do just want to say two things very quickly, because I want to let them continue. First thing is, I actually don't think Nick Fuentes is anti-authoritarian at all. I think Nick Fuentes is an authoritarian. I watch this guy's streams every single night. I've been watching his streams every night for the past year. So I'm very familiar with his beliefs. I'm very familiar with what he thinks. He glazes China, Russia, Putin, Xi Jinping, Adolf Hitler, Joseph Stalin, Bukele. He has a thing for strongmen. And he contrasts that with his constant criticisms of libertarianism, liberalism, America, the 1780 or the 1776 Revolution, 1789, the French Revolution, and he talks about how America has drifted away from being under the authority of the church, and Europe has drifted away from being under the authority of the church, and that's the reason why it's fallen into decay. And he even said this in his Bradley Martin interview that he posted yesterday. So Nick Fuentes is obviously very preferential and favorable to the idea of having some kind of top-down Catholic, maybe not theocracy, but a kind of authoritarian government that is informed by the Catholic Church and enforces virtue and restores a sense of civic identity and civic responsibility on the population, as opposed to this liberal individualist free-for-all where people from every continent, every ethnic group get to come here and do whatever they want and not assimilate. And on some level, I agree with him on that. I do like a kind of top-down order, but I don't... He acts as if he's not pro-authoritarian. He obviously is. I think you'd have to give him an unreasonable amount of leeway, a ridiculous degree of benefit of the doubt to come away with the conclusion that this guy is not authoritarian. And honestly, I understand. I'll be real here. We can be real about this. I have some authoritarian leanings. I can be preferential to authoritarianism. Maybe I shouldn't say that, but it's true. And the reason why is because when we talk about authoritarianism, I'm sure Nick and I would agree on this. We're not talking about the military kicking through your door at 3 o'clock in the morning because you said something mean on the internet. That's not what we're talking about when we say we like, an authoritarian leader or something, or a strong man. When we say we like an authoritarian, we want somebody who can move fast. We want somebody who can collectivize or consolidate power very quickly to reindustrialize a country, pass an infrastructure bill, prosecute political enemies, deal with crime, crack down on immigration, these sorts of things, restore order, create a sense of national consciousness in the population, a sense of patriotism and pride in the country, a sense of kind of nationhood and unity among the nation, and a kind of culture that everybody kind of subscribes to. So when we talk about authoritarianism, those are the elements of it that we like. The order, the structure, the strength, the patriotism, the largesse of authoritarianism. But we understand that there is excesses to it when it goes into totalitarianism, where the state is literally surveilling your thoughts and like monitoring every word you type on the internet. That's different. That's not something I think Nick Fuentes or I would agree with. You can make the argument Lee Kuan Yew was an authoritarian. And Lee Kuan Yew is my favorite political leader of all time because of the order, the peace, the harmony, the technocracy, the beauty, the structure, the infrastructure, the cities, the skyline, the everything, the beauty, the culture of Singapore. It's a unique and marvelous case study. And so for me, when I think about authoritarianism, we think about order, strength, peace, strong military, national unity. That's what we think of when we think of authoritarianism. So I don't like it when Nick acts like he's not one. He certainly is one. I think it'd be, you'd have to be just willfully ignorant not to believe that. And then the second thing I was going to say was, with Nick, it is hard to, the thing is, right, that's why I try not to say extreme things on my show, because what inevitably ends up happening is, the thing is, we live in a clip culture, okay? Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, like people can take 5, 10, 30, 60-second clips from one of your 1,000 shows that you've posted over the years, and they can spin any narrative they want about you. Like, you can have a guy who says Nick Fuentes is a fascist and put together a compilation of 5 or 10 clips that make him look like a fascist. You can have someone who takes together 5 or 10 clips over, the span of 10 years about Nick Fuentes and make it look like this guy is a communist, or make him look like he's gay, or make him look like he's evil or violent or whatever. That's why you have to be very consistent in your messaging over time so that people cannot attack your reputation. Because if you're sloppy with your words, if you're loose with your words, especially in this clipping culture, it's going to bite you in the ass. And people are going to take clips from your show and stitch them together to make you look like some crazy person, or to paint you in a way that is unfavorable to you. or mischaracterizes you in a way that benefits your political enemies who have an agenda against you, who want to paint you in a particular way. So you have to be consistent with your messaging over time. You can't one day say, we love Hitler and Xi Jinping and Stalin, and we want to have Chinese military slice the heads off of black criminals in New York City. He said that, or something to that effect. You can't say things like that. You can't glaze Putin. You can't glaze Stalin, glaze Hitler, glaze China, glaze Russia, glaze all these authoritarian, homogenous countries, which I'm sure that's what he wants. He wants an ethnically homogenous, racially homogenous, Christian country. I'm sure he would prefer that over what we have now. Ideally, which is why he glazes these countries with a strong authoritarian leader. But it's like you can't say all these things and then turn around and act like you're some, you love the founders, you love freedom, you love liberalism, and this kind of culture of permissiveness that we've created. It doesn't align. It's not consistent over a long period. So, anyways, that's that.
It starts with the idea that a country, an empire, needs industry. You need to be able to make things. We don't make things. We don't even make the machines that make things anymore. China makes all the things. And so starting from the idea where Stalin says in the 1920s, he says, we're either going to do in 15 years what it would normally take us 100 years to do, or we're going to die. Our country will not exist anymore because we are encircled. And I feel like America's in sort of a similar position where we need to race ahead of China or else we are going to be destroyed. We need industry back in the country. And I don't believe in taking grain to feed the factory workers and enslaving people in gulags, but I do think the government needs to set. It's sort of like when JFK said, we're going to go to the moon in 10 years. I like the idea, this ambitious idea of we're going to catch up in 10 years. We're just going to go out there and do it. We're just going to build it. And I don't support, killing people. I don't think you need to kill people to achieve that. But I like the idea of urgency, setting targets, having a national strategy, and, and doing it for the sake of power projection.
I agree. I fully am on board with that. This idea. This is something that James Burnham talked about in the Managerial Revolution. What happened was a lot of our elites in academia, in the think tanks, in the institutions, many of them shifted away from this kind of nationalist lens of approaching geopolitics, and they became very globalist, or they became very post-national. And what has happened since then is this emphasis on the nation, this emphasis on the state and its role in strengthening the nation, or projecting power on a global scale using industry, using tariffs, using protectionism, using Navy and shipbuilding capacity. Like this sort of thing, this way of thinking has diminished in academia and the think tanks and institutions. We don't have the same kind of emphasis on central planning. And I'm not saying you plan the whole economy, but there are certain things where you have to have targets: how many ships you want to build, how many aircrafts you want to build, how many carriers you want to build, how many drones you want to build. And these sorts of things, you can efficiently determine how many of those things you need to compete with other superpowers if the state is doing it, as opposed to just like the free market economy, which is really optimizing for profit. What is going to give you the greatest profit margin? If it's not tanks, they're not going to produce a lot of tanks. If it's not fighter jets, they're not going to produce a lot of fighter jets. And if it's APCs or certain kinds of weapons, they'll maximize for those things because you can get a greater profit out of it, as opposed to things that might be more important like aircrafts or tanks. So, and that's just a hypothetical, but it kind of goes to show the free market is about maximizing profit, not national strength, not national power projection. The free market has a distinct role, and it is not in determining the fate of a nation state. Okay, that's not the goal of Wall Street or the military industrial complex or any of these other private sector actors. That's the state's job. That's the government's job. Okay, so they have distinct roles. That's the reason why I agree with what Fuentes is saying here. There has to be some kind of planning on production capacity, and you have to set targets in order to compete over a long period of time. I agree.
Well, and I agree, by the way. Industrialization, right, is good. We went through that in America quite a bit before Russia. the reason they had to play catch up is because it was an awful place and they had to do it by force. So my question is, am I mischaracterizing? And everything that I ask is genuine here because I'm trying to see where we disagree. Because I think Stalin is a fascinating historical character. You're talking to a guy, we did the great Diktatov, where we did brackets for 3 days of Hitler, Stalin, Pol Pot, Mao. Funniest one was Papadoc in Haiti because he sucked Pinochet, who wasn't all wrong. And we were very clear about this. And I think Mao ended up winning. Might have been Pol Pot, though the number wasn't as high, but he was just really dumb and really brutal, which is a bad combination. How could you get, if we're talking about now, to Stalin's industrial results without Stalin's methods? If you want to get to a Catholic, first off, have you said Catholic theocracy? Is that, am I misquoting?
I might have said it, but I don't believe in a Catholic theocracy. I think that the government should be Christian, but not a theocracy.
Okay. Not a dictatorship either?
We might need a very powerful executive for a short amount of time. I think that's maybe unavoidable.
Okay.
But not an ideological totalitarian state, no.
So how do you get to that in the industrialization that you talk about with Stalin? How do you get it? How do you get there?
I think that you need tariffs. I think you need subsidies. I think you need a massive public works program.
Right.
Something like the New Deal.
I think everybody should be required to serve 1 or 2 years in some kind of public servant role, or, in some kind of like civil service role. I think every American should be required to spend 1 or 2 years doing that. And I think in the process, they should have the ability to, gain skills or gain knowledge or network with people or work their way up through the government or something like that. I think that is a really good place to start, because the thing is, in America, there's no buy-in. There's no connection to the nation. If you look at places like Singapore, everything is done through the state, okay? And some people might not like that method, but there's a lot of benefits to it, right? Because if 80% of the people in Singapore are living in government housing, where the vast majority of the population, 80% of the people are living in government housing, but they have a state bank account which draws 10% from their biweekly or weekly or monthly check or salary even, and their employer has to match that and pay into that state bank account, and then they take money from that state bank account to pay for their housing, a mortgage, education, healthcare, all that kind of stuff, but it's coming from the 10% that comes from their salary. So they're working for it. It's not just like Section 8. It's not just like a government handout. They actually have to work to get these benefits. And I think something like that would be really good for our country, because what's happening right now is there's no buy-in to the nation. There's nothing connecting us to the country, really, other than, spiritually and ideologically, and our love of the nation and our symbols and the fact that we are Americans. We want something material, some material connection to the nation, some material connection to the state. I think that is really, I think that could be a potentially good step forward. I don't know. That's just my 2 cents on it.
And I know you're probably not a fan of that because I know you're a huge free market guy, but I think that one of the things the free market doesn't do well is it doesn't allocate resources efficiently on like a long-term timeline. In a long-term timeline, America needs to have a ton of industry to be able to support its Navy, to be able to protect supply chains and trade routes. And the free market has not been able to accomplish that. So I think that the government needs to intervene in this case and basically say, like, we're not going to import these manufactured goods from China. We have to make them ourselves. We need to subsidize them. And maybe we bring people on, onto the dole of the state in a public works program to accomplish some of these things. So I believe in an intervention from the state to do that.
Well, okay. So I understand, by the way, tariffs, I understand. And especially when you look at the revenue they'll be generating, I don't think that's an infringement of the free markets. I think it's a correction of an unfair market, of a market where we've been fleeced. So I think we agree on that. Subsidies are massive public works. I mean,
by the way, just getting this out of the way, I'm not a free markets guy. I don't think we should subsidize Europe's defense through NATO and then let them dump their agricultural products here while our agricultural industry loses out or becomes weakened because of all these, foreign agricultural products that are being dumped into our country. So I'm not like a big free markets guy. I'm a big tariffs protectionist guy. Obviously, to a certain extent, not just like baseline tariffs, but sector specific or product specific tariffs. Absolutely support those.
A debt, is it 39 trillion? I haven't looked at the clock recently. So I certainly wouldn't say that we haven't been subsidizing things. We absolutely have, and we can't afford it. And the old joke, right, in Russia is they pay us to look like we're working, and we look like we're working. Like they look like they're paying us, we look like we're working. We've done this here in the States. I mean, if you go back to FDR, and maybe you're a fan of FDR's approach. Certainly Barack Obama, the biggest modern spending package. I was around for that. Shovel-ready jobs was awful. And same thing for Russia. I mean, if you throw enough bodies and human suffering at something, you can get something done. But even then, it was still significantly behind the world that was more free, the United States. So where have we not done it? Because I look at it and I go, well, we have been subsidizing almost everything. I agree with you on China. I agree with you on tariffs. I think that's a huge threat. What would that look like?
Well, I don't think we've been subsidizing industry. I'm not saying just like subsidies across the board. I mean, we need to actually subsidize and prioritize the industries that we need in the country. So like, for example, the CHIPS Act, I think that was a great thing. I don't think it was enough, and I don't think it was comprehensive, but I want more things like that. Like, there's no reason why they're doing it in Arizona. They're bringing TSMC over to Arizona. They're building a chip fabrication facility. We need that. And I think the government should give tax breaks or just straight up give subsidies to the companies that are going to do that. And I think that we need aggressive trade negotiations. I guess maybe where we differ ideologically is that I want a very smart government. I liked what Doge did. I liked the idea of bringing people from the private sector into the government. And even Trump said that in 2016, to work on trade deals, to work on, for example, China steals all our intellectual property. They steal all of the developments that we have. We need people that know about technology almost in a technocratic way, like true experts guiding our trade policy, guiding in some ways our economic policy, setting a benchmark that it's like, we need like 10% of the economy or 15 or 20% of the economy to be productive in 5 or 10 years. We need to be making ports, ships, or we need to have countries in our orbit that can do it for us, like South Korea or Japan. But we just need people that are in charge that are, kind of aware of this problem. So I guess that's maybe the difference.
No, I don't think that's the difference. I can outline maybe the difference based on what you just said. I don't have a problem with tariffs. Sure. I know what you're talking about with the CHIPS Act. I agree. And I think a big problem is, absolutely, Chinese stealing intellectual property. That's why I think they're a huge threat. What I see, I mean, then you could point, though, to like American auto manufacturing, which has been abysmal. I mean, industries that have been heavily subsidized. I mean, if you look at insurance industries, pharmaceutical companies, if you look at energy companies, I mean, you remember also about Solyndra, green energy companies.
Totally.
Every company that's been heavily subsidized and regulated tends to be less efficient and it tends to be more expensive. But we do need to protect certainly things that are, I would say that chips are a matter of national security. But my thing there is, you say you like Doge. Well, I don't know why you think I would differ. That was largely, axing things. You've just mentioned stuff that really for the first time has been done under this administration. And where we differ is I go, is it perfect? No. Is it a step in the right direction compared to Biden, compared to Barack Obama? Yeah. And then I know that you've also talked about having to burn it all down. So where I differ is, you've said you're reactionary, or I've heard you use the term maybe accelerationist. Well, accelerate toward what? Because if that's what you want, and I agree with you,
I'm pretty sure Nick has explicitly said multiple times he's not an accelerationist. But like I said, this is what happens when you say so many different things. One day you're an accelerationist, the next day you're a reformist, and then people can take clips out of context and paint you however they want. That's why you have to be specific and consistent with your messaging and with what you say. Otherwise, people can paint you a million different ways. So
getting more of that than ever before. So how would you get there, and why would you burn down the progress that's being made?
Well, I'm not an accelerationist. I think that I think that's sort of misguided, because if we're, and I agree with you, accelerating towards what? That's the operative question. So that's why I'm not an accelerationist. I think that to make things worse is only basically to vote in favor of chaos and death and potentially civil war, low-level political violence. And I think you're rolling the dice with that. So I'm with you on that. As far as the Trump administration is concerned,
can I pause you?
Yeah, go ahead. Sure.
And I don't want to interrupt, but like I said, I want to address kind of the points individually.
No, totally. Yeah.
Feel
free.
Okay. And hopefully you think this is fair, because I really do want to be, and I know that I disagree with you on some fundamentals here, but you did say that Kamala Harris would be a better choice. And you did take billboards out against Donald.
So now this is where they're going to start butting heads. Now this is where Crowder's really going to start pinning Fuentes down. This is where things get interesting. This is where things start to get really interesting.
Trump and told people not to vote in certain elections. That would be, and just maybe you didn't use the term accelerationist, but you said at least then that would sort of ignite what we need, because it's a uniparty, it's all the same, right? So I view that as accelerationism, whereas I see where we agree, where we find progress, I would argue is better than 4 years of Kamala. And I would argue that we were at the precipice of, really, we were looking at sending into the abyss 15 million on the low end illegal aliens, and not to mention the legal immigration problem. Add another 10 million with Kamala Harris, we no longer have a country, where you and I would both agree. So that's where I don't understand your position.
Yeah, well, let's sit in this for a minute. So first of all, and I just want to clarify, I know you know this, but maybe your audience doesn't. I never told people to vote for Kamala. I didn't vote for Kamala. I never told people to vote for Kamala. I didn't endorse Kamala. My plan in and again, as long as we're in good faith, I'm going to explain to you my thought process on this last year. It looked at one point like this was going to be a very contentious election, like it would be very close. It turned out not to be, and eventually it became clear that it wouldn't be. But it seemed like maybe this election would come down to one state, like Michigan or Wisconsin or Pennsylvania, one of the 3 Rust Belt states. And my problem in 24 is that Trump was not promising an immigration moratorium. In fact, he was saying the opposite. He said that he would staple green cards to diplomas, which is a very famous policy. It's been around for decades, and Democrats and Republicans have said, we're going to give green cards to every foreign student. I said, that's a disaster. That's terrible. And then the other thing is, there was a rumor that he had a quid pro quo arrangement with Miriam Adelson that he would allow Israel to annex the West Bank and intervene in the war with Iran. And so those were kind of my 2 issues. As I said, if we elect Trump, we're going to get all these Chinese and Indians. They're going to get green cards, and we're going to get H-1Bs because that's what Silicon Valley wants, and we're going to get a war with Iran. And so I looked at it this way. I said, if the America Firsters rise up and sort of tell Trump, here's the ultimatum. You can come out and say you're against the H-1Bs and the F-1 and green cards, then you could say you're not going to bring us to war in Iran, and we'll vote for you. But if you don't, we can't vote for you. And that was kind of the idea. It was like a contract with the Trump team. Now, ultimately, Trump became basically, his advantage grew to be so big that he wasn't worried about losing in one of those states. And I felt that way. I said, we don't have leverage anymore because he's leading by so much. It's clear he's going to win. And that's why we sort of abandoned it in the middle of it. But aside from, so that's where that came from.
Just to clarify, abandoned what?
Abandoned that project, the Groyper War II, because we were going to go to Michigan and we were literally going to knock on doors and hand out leaflets and stuff. And we said, you know what, let's just not anymore because he's going to win anyway. So we bought one billboard.
You were going to knock on the doors and tell people to vote for Trump, the Groypers in Michigan?
Yeah, no, to sign on to something like a pledge that would say, we will not vote for Trump unless. That was kind of the idea. And we sort of spun that up, but we abandoned it when it became clear that he would win.
Okay. And I understand that, by the way. I understand the idea of holding the representatives accountable. I mean, that's why we have primaries. But
just look at the facial expressions. You can see like it's getting more tense, it's getting more serious. And even just the tone of this conversation. So I like this. This is like really what I've been wanting to see for a long time. Like him being pinned down on his actual beliefs and like a real back and forth between these 2 people.
But hopefully that's a part of your strategy, because a lot of people just don't run in primaries, and that's a viable option. But I do remember what caught me off guard, you saying that Kamala Harris was a better choice. And I remember part of what you said was because Trump, if he's elected, legitimizes the system. And that would be worse. You didn't want Trump to be elected because it would legitimize the system. Explain what you meant by that, because that sounds to me like you want to delegitimize and almost revolution instead of Trump.
Well, and here's the thing. I think that Trump is obviously the better president if you're just taking like all the nominal figures, like fewer illegal immigrants, he secured the border, the economy's going to be better, the government's going to be more efficient. Like, so, I mean, we're in agreement on that. Here's the problem. And I try to make people think about it in these terms. It's sure. And I don't want this to sound like a cop-out, but I'm trying to get people to think, which is that
right.
Trump gets elected, and let's think about what happens on day number 2. Whereas in 2020, everybody said the election is rigged. Like 86% of Republicans said, oh, the election was BS. Now,
it was close to half of Democrats, too, I think.
Yeah, it was substantial. It was across the board. Now nobody believes that. And whereas at one time people believed like, oh, like the system really needs to be overthrown. Like we really need radical change. Now they're saying, oh, Trump won. Oh, I feel relieved. Now we're okay. And look at the things that Trump has done. And we're going to get in. I can tell we're going to get into some of these things. The Epstein files, bombing Iran. And I'm not gish-galloping. I'm just giving a little list of things I don't like. The H-1B visas, the 600,000 Chinese students. Yeah. All these things happen. And because they're happening under Trump, he is legitimizing them, and he's legitimizing the moneyed interests that are responsible for them. And I do think that deflates a lot of the fervor for change that existed before. And I just think sometimes, you know, is that necessarily better in the long term? I don't disagree that Trump is, you know, there's a very big pragmatic benefit, but in the long term, I worry about that.
Yeah, I definitely think it's better in the long term.
That makes perfect sense. That makes complete sense.
I agree with you completely on 600,000 Chinese students. I don't know if you saw, we did an entire hour on that. H-1Bs. I was throttled as a result from, well, I can't say Elon Musk directly, but I believe I perhaps called him a retard, whatever it was. I insulted him quite publicly. And, you know, for my troubles, made $27 in the course of a month on X. Ashley Sinclair made like 26 grand in 2 weeks. Who knew, right? That's kind of odd. Yeah, I agree with you on H-1Bs. I will tell you, worse than 600,000 Chinese students would be another 15 to 20 million illegals and changing the census rule, which is what we were looking at, where that redistricts the entire map. And there's no chance to any type of conservative, Republican, nationalist, populist being elected again. And I do think that there was a lot of progress made. I would go.
But that's kind of the thing. That's what the Republican Party is hedging on. It's, you have to vote for me. We're going to give you slop. We're not going to change anything. We're not going to drain the swamp. We're not going to do mass deportations. But we will close down the border. And it's like, yeah, but like that's the one thing they're hedging on. It's like, we won't let, 15 to 20 million people coming through the country, but then they'll do everything else. They won't do mass deportations. So even if they don't let new people in, you still have so many people here illegally that it kind of offsets it. And it's like, they can say, we won't let 10 million people or 15 million people come here illegally like Biden did, but they'll use that one argument to basically get away with so many other things that are bad. It's like, okay, but at least we're marginally better than Democrats on this one issue that you guys care about. That's kind of the problem. That's why you got to hold their feet to the fire for real change.
I mean, a lot of wins, not only the board. 99% is not marginal to me as far as reduction. I think that's pretty significant. But I'd like to go to, I understand where you're coming from. I understand that perspective, but I also don't understand what the threshold is as far as, okay, burn it all down, or we want to delegitimize the system. Because I know we lived through that, like you just said. Republicans thought it was an illegitimate election. I did as well. Not a whole bunch of folks at the Daily Wire back then, so I think we were on the same page. And I also, obviously, when we had the lockdowns, all of that, we then lived through 4 years of Biden, right? So it was already seen as not legitimate. We saw the results. I think the results of not electing another Biden is better. But I would like to roll a clip, because I think it's in this vein and might help set it up. It was where you discussed, Epstein, too. That's the one thing. Of course, I absolutely agree. I don't know if you know, I recreated the Epstein cell down to the millimeter and tried to hang myself with a force meter.
I saw that, yeah.
It's possible, not likely. So I thought it was a huge mistake. I think Pam Bondi's an idiot. And I mean actually like an idiot, like she potentially could be a mongoloid, using the term hate speech. She's a moron, and I've always said that, using the term, and that rollout was terrible. That doesn't undo the things that a lot of people who elected not just Trump, but the cultural wins that they want. I think there's a lot of good there, and I don't think burning it.
I think that's fair. I think Trump has achieved a lot of cultural wins. Elon Musk buying X, free speech. And if there's anything Trump has done well, if there's anything Trump has succeeded in doing, it has been this like right-wing cultural renaissance, this revolution where you have young Gen Z men flocking to the right wing, being big-time nationalists, patriots, Trump supporters, MAGA guys. And I think that Trump has severely, if not completely eliminated, he has at least severely wounded political correctness and wokeness and transgender ideology and all this kind of stuff. So at the very minimum, Trump has awakened a kind of consciousness, a kind of reactionary, right-wing, nationalist consciousness that had he not ever been elected, I don't think that ever would have happened. So kudos to Trump. For at the very least, he did achieve those cultural wins, if nothing else. He did accomplish that, and he deserves credit for it. I think on net, he's been a positive in that regard.
Down is the best approach. But here you mentioned a new potential coalition, and I think sort of lay out a prescription as to how to go forward, and I'd like to ask you about it. And again, we'll make the link to the full show available so that no one mischaracterizes anything.
Ro Khanna and Thomas Massie working together against the interests to compel the files. What do you think that has, a 90% approval rating? If you had progressive Democrats and nationalist Republicans working together, let's say to compel the release of the Epstein files, what kind of approval rating do you think that has? 90%? And what if they got together and they opposed foreign aid to Israel? What approval rating do you think that would have? 90%? Do you think that that Republicans or independents running under that brand, do you think that that would become more popular or less popular over time? 4 becomes 8, 8 becomes 16. It snowballs. And we need to propel someone into the White House that is just a populist. If the right can come down on health care and on a social safety net and maybe on some subsidies for education, and if the left can come down on the anti-white open border stuff and they can agree that we have
Jesus, Nick, blow your nose, man, Lord,
have a country, that party will win 90% of the vote and rule for a century. That's the compromise. That's the populist compromise.
Okay, and I think you were, you articulated that pretty well. I would say Epstein already has a coalition. Everyone voted to release the files except Clay Higgins, who is a punchline, deservedly so. Like, that's the first time everyone knew Clay Higgins. Like, he really must love pedophiles. I wish I loved anything as much as he loves defending sex islands. I would like to hear your prescription for how that works, because I would say this. If the only compromise was the left on immigration, and if I believe that there was any semblance of a reality in which they compromise on immigration, and compromising on free markets to varying degree, okay. But what do we do with the Ro Khanna on the Second Amendment, on the First Amendment, on transing the kids, on reparations that someone like a Ro Khanna or any member of the Democratic Party, but Ro Khanna specifically says is a priority economically and morally, on abortion? What do you do with all of the other compromises that aren't listed? How does that coalition work, and bring me through the end point?
Well, and I'm not a huge fan of either of them, actually. You could also say Thomas Massie on H-1Bs. You could say Thomas Massie on immigration also.
You could say him on Israel also, as far as his biggest donor. It's not AIPAC, but a lot of influence.
Certainly. Certainly. But what I'm referring to is maybe more something like Trump 2016, who is basically a populist. And you look at Trump in 2016, and to me, that's kind of the prescription, where it's like in 2016, he comes out and he says, we're going to get the money out of politics. He says, I'm not going to take donor money. I'm not going to take super PAC money. I don't listen to special interests. He says, law and order, close the border. As far as health care, he didn't even give a plan. He said, we'll just take care of everybody. He said, we'll get rid of the lines around the states and we'll just take care of everybody. Who even knows what that means? And he says, we're going to put America first in foreign policy. Now, I think that here's the thing. I'm under no illusions. We're not going to win 80% of the left or 40% or even 30%. But I'm thinking that if we can win, because I think there are a lot of people on the far left or even some of the abundance liberals, they're getting tired of a lot of the far left too. There's a lot of these liberals in the center that are saying, how are you going to have public transportation when you have people getting stabbed in the neck and there's no police? Like, we can't defund the police and even have these cities that we want to have. I think there's a lot of people on the far left, too, that are saying, maybe the woke has gone too far.
I'm sorry, was that a quote? Did Ro Khanna say that, or was that just a general sentiment?
I'm not talking specifically about Ro Khanna. That's just an example.
Because when I hear it, I almost thought you said I was like, oh, yeah, that sounds like something a liberal would say, like, stab the cop in the neck.
No, when people...
Steven Crowder, you're not funny! Stop trying to crack jokes, Steven Crowder. You're not funny. Stop.
Are being stabbed in the neck by, like, black people, for example.
Oh, that's also something I could hear a leftist supporting. But yes, okay, go on. I just didn't know if it was specific. Okay, yeah.
Well, and here's the thing. I mean, fundamentally, it comes down to the fact that, let's just talk about it in general. So that's my prescription. It's like populist Trump, and let's just get a small percentage of the left liberals, who I think have come a long way in the past 5 years since COVID. But I would say that in general, I think maybe where we disagree is I look at this Republican team. What has it actually done for us? Because you seem to be defending like, well, we're supposed to vote Republican and we're supposed to say, well, this is better than the alternative.
No.
And he's making these wins. Well, hang on. And I look at it and say, it's been 10.
See, I like it. Like, this is the first actual debate. This is the first actually like contentious conversation he's had since like either Candace Owens. Well, Candace Owens was in June, so Dinesh D'Souza, I think that was July. So since July, this is like the first really contentious conversation Nick has had, right? You've had all these Alex Jones appearances, probably 3 or 4 of them, PBD, Tucker Carlson, the Red Scare, Glenn Greenwald, various others. There's been dozens of podcasts that he's done in like the last 5-6 months. So this is like the first really like back and forth. We're going to like debate it. We're going to like hash this out. So I really like this. Like this is a nice change of pace. I really do like this.
10 years of Trump.
And Nick is doing a good job controlling the conversation, to his credit. And the thing is, right, Nick is not getting flustered. Maybe he'll unravel or get a little bit more frustrated as the conversation goes forward, but he's keeping his composure and he's controlling the conversation.
And, I know Biden brought them in, but we're 10 million illegals up since Biden, and there's no mass deportations. I look at the wars. We're getting into more wars, not fewer. He wanted to keep us in Afghanistan and Bagram. He's building bases in Syria. We're getting into Venezuela. I look at what we have not done in 10 years, and I say, this is a prescription where it hasn't been working. And so I'm very against this line where you say, well, we're going to vote Republican. And we're going to, what exactly? I mean, what's your prescription? If Trump is failing us miserably, what are we supposed to do here?
Yeah. Well, here's the thing is I don't agree that our representatives are all failing us miserably. I think they failed in quite a few ways. If you're talking about like the Johnsons of the world and the Rhinos, absolutely. But the things that you just listed, and I would, again, ask you for your prescription because I give mine Monday through Friday. Every day, 11 a.m. Eastern. I've done one on voting, what we need to do. I've done one on immigration, done one on big tech and Section 230. I'm very curious as to your prescriptions so that people can contrast them. You mentioned law and order. I don't know of any president who sent the National Guard in as aggressively when we're talking about D.C. and Chicago. That way you talk about law and order. You're talking about
in Chicago?
Well, I'm saying any effort being made. I know what we've lived through as far as what Ro Khanna would support, Black Lives Matter, the Police and Justice Act. Again,
BLM
I don't think
happened under Trump in 2020.
So let me ask
you.
See,
now it's starting to get heated. Now they're starting to go back and forth. See, this is what I wanted.
What's your prescription? Why hopscotch all the people who I think watching right now would agree with you if they think that you're on board with them on LGBTQ, on immigration, on Second Amendment rights, on First Amendment rights? Why hopscotch then to compromise with someone who has actively fought to destroy all those things like a Ro Khanna? Wouldn't it make more sense to form a coalition with more than half the country who already exists? Because you don't want to take them for granted. Take Trump out of it. I'm talking about the people, the voters. What's your prescription?
I would say that it's a structural problem, which is that the reason, first of all, I mean, we have to deal with the fact that Trump is not delivering. Like, if you don't want to gish gallop, let's just start there. You say, well, I don't think it's a complete failure. Yeah, it is. And you bring up BLM. BLM happened in 2020 because Trump let it happen, because Sean Hannity was calling him every day and saying, this is better for us in November if BLM burns down the cities. So the summer of love happened in 2020 when Trump was president. And then Trump comes back.
No, it started under Barack Obama with going back to Trayvon Martin.
The George Floyd.
See, now he's being willfully ignorant. Like, Steven Crowder knows that was years before George Floyd. I think Trayvon Martin was 2012. Ferguson was 2014. That was years before Trump was president in 2020. And before BLM really, like, was taken to the next level. And you had all these left-wing agitators and the feds who were putting bricks in major U.S. cities. So no, he's being willfully ignorant here. He knows exactly what happened when Trump was president. I don't know why he's playing this game.
Floyd Summer of Love.
Yeah, it was a continuation.
No, it was not.
Well,
no,
I think they kind of picked up.
So what happened for 6 years between 2014 and 2020? What happened between those 6 years? There was no major BLM activism, riots, none of that. For 6 years, George Floyd gets killed during the beginning of the pandemic when Trump is still president, and then craziness follows shortly afterwards. So how is it a continuation if you had 6 years with no BLM protests, no BLM activism, not on a national level? It's not a continuation. That's not true. They went underground, and then Trump being president, plus COVID-19, plus George Floyd's death, that reignited this national like revolt, this all-out rebellion in the name of George Floyd. And this happened under Trump, and he stood by and let it happen. So to pretend as if there was this one big continuation is not true. There was 6 years with little to no activity and little to no national media coverage. So no, this is just completely willfully ignorant.
On it. Don't you think? It wasn't it was ongoing.
I was there, and I had people on my show back then with Hands Up, Don't Shoot. And I remember the assassination of the Dallas PD. Donald Trump was elected, specifically his first term, because of how disruptive Black Lives Matter was and law and order. And I would say there was significantly more than under Barack Obama. But if you say they're the same, that's just where we disagree.
Well, wait, what are we debating about? I mean, in the George Floyd Summer of Love.
Look, now Nick is starting to get loud. Now he's starting to get verbose. You can hear the change in his tone. You can hear the change in his voice. It's coming from his chest now.
Yeah, I'm wrong about the calendar. It was in 2020 when Trump was president, and it was the worst, arguably the worst BLM violence, I think, in the 21st.
And look at his facial expressions. He's like more intense, more serious, more aggressive.
Century. I think that was worse, actually, than Mike Brown or Trayvon Martin.
Absolutely.
And Trump was president, and he didn't intervene because he was told it'd be better for him. And now in 2025, there's no National Guard. He chickened out on that. He chickens out on all that stuff. He was going to send him to Chicago, going to send him in every major city. Never happened. Even here. You know, they're doing the deportations in Broadview here in Illinois. They brought in like 400 National Guard, and ICE is still getting chased. And they got boxed in by a bunch of different protesters, one with a semi-automatic rifle. There's no law and order. Irina Zarutska died under Trump. The crime in New York under Trump. The crime in Chicago under Trump. It's a failure. And we're 10 years in. And so you say, what is it going to take? Because we elected him once,
twice. Can I ask you something, though, just because this is the point I'd like to address when you say Irina Zarutska, and obviously we've covered that, and I think we're in agreement when you look at the judge and you look at the man who was released, I believe, 14 times, right, under the guise of equity, Black Lives Matter, precisely the kinds of policies that only exist because they have been supported by the radical left who run the entire Democrat Party, right? So, yeah, some of that happened under Trump's watch, and I agree. He's definitely far from perfect, and I think he's failed in a lot of ways. But who has been orchestrating? You talk about these constructionists, right? They want that, and people like Ro Khanna, people who you talk about in your coalition, it's their raison d'etre. So why hopscotch the voters who would not vote for that coalition precisely for the reasons we're discussing? Because they're against all of it, because Trump hasn't done enough to fight. I mean, COVID happened under Trump too. Huge mistakes. Fauci, awful. But I certainly think that 20 million illegal aliens in 4 years is worse than a reduction of 90-something%. I certainly think that the people who orchestrated Black Lives Matter and the people who ran those cities and the people who have blocked ICE from doing anything is worse than the guy sending in ICE with any effort at all.
But let's talk about even that. Why do we get all these people from Venezuela? Because Trump hired John Bolton to destroy Venezuela's economy, and then on his last day in office gave Venezuela temporary protected status. That was one of his last acts as president, and that means they can't be deported. And then you got 6 million Venezuelans in an exodus, and how many of them ended up here? And by the way, Trump...
About 500,000, about 500,000. Last time I checked, it was about 500,000. Most of the Venezuelans, this is something that people bring up. Most of the Venezuelans, although there is a lot here, it's somewhere between 500,000 and like 800,000. It's in that ballpark. And this was going all the way back to, I think, 2015. They've been net negative migration in the hundreds of thousands from Venezuela over like the past 10 years. Since 2015 to 2025, I think about 6 to 7 million Venezuelans have left the country. It's been like 800,000, 700,000 every single year. I think only about 500,000 to 700,000 have ended up here. Most of them have ended up in like Ecuador, Colombia, Mexico, other Latin American countries. In some cases, even Spain. Only about 500,000 ended up being brought here, which is still too many. But it is important to keep that in mind. People bring that up a lot, and it's like 500,000. That's bad, but it's like, well, actually, no, 500,000 still is a lot. Shit, when you really consider it, yeah. It feels so small in a country of 350 million people.
Ran in 2016 saying, we're going to build the wall and we're going to solve immigration. It didn't happen. There's no wall. He didn't solve it. What he did was executive orders, which Biden immediately overturned when he took power and then brought in 10 million. Okay, so Trump gets elected again. What does Trump do? You're right, he did secure the border. That's true. But we're 10 million deep. That's a little too late. He promised mass deportations. We've had maybe 300,000 deportations this year. Is that going to go up during the midterm elections? Is that going to go up when everybody's running in the primary in 27? I don't see it happening. And either way, it hasn't happened. So this is my frustration where I'm like, I was with you in the first term. As in the first term, when I was in college, I was like, yeah, like vote for Trump, never coming down. If he falls short, we'll go on Twitter and tell him to try better. But 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, Republicans have called for our vote all these times and things are not getting better like at all. And that's sort of the frustration where I start to say, let's turn the table around. And I'm not hopscotching over the voters. I want all the right-wing voters. What I want to hopscotch is the donors. I want to hopscotch the party, which is the RNC, which is, Little Tech, Silicon Valley, which is the Israel lobby, which is Wall Street, because they're driving the stuff. Like the reason that Trump is not really what he delivers, or what he promises is because, if you were to deport all these illegal aliens, it's going to be bad for big agriculture, Wall Street, inflation might tick up. And so
Marjorie Taylor Greene's construction company.
That's right. Yeah, 100%. And that's why I want to bypass.
Okay, so bypass. So, and nobody is saying that President Trump is perfect. And I'm not a micro-political guy, a cultural guy largely. And I think there's been a major shift culturally. I mean, half of all gay characters are going to be going away, and GLAAD is lamenting that. I don't know how much more happy I can get. I think that the replatforming is a big thing. Right? I mean, as someone who's been also debanked, demonetized.
Yeah, it's like, he's got a point though. It's like, why is everyone gay, transgender, lesbian? Like, what is that? That's not normal. Nobody wants to see that shit. Not in every show, not in every movie, not in every advertisement. It's like at a certain point, it's like, can we just chill? You know what I mean? Just chill a little bit with all this kind of stuff. Anyways, I agree with Crowder. He's right.
Through PayPal, Shopify, all that, very similar to you. The fact that you're able to sit here now and have this conversation, I mean, it took a lot of work from coalition people like me, turning down a $50 million contract and migrating the world's biggest conservative, right-leaning nationalist YouTube channel over to Rumble so that you're able to do that. That's a win, right? And you could look at that like a light switch, deplatformed, including the president himself, replatformed. To me, that's probably the biggest thing, the fact that you are able to sit here and talk when you weren't.
But I got replatformed under Biden. I got my Twitter account back in May 24. Musk bought Twitter in 2022.
Right.
And Rumble really started to grow after Trump got banned in 21. That's when all the little tech money jumped in because they said, we're going to do True Social, Trump Media Group, Rumble, these things. So, now that Trump is back in office, there's might be more censorship. Like you have people
But Elon Musk put you back specifically. He bought that to balance the powers that be. I mean, there was a point in time.
But it wasn't Trump.
But that's the reason for it, right? There's no world in which you're replatformed unless Donald Trump is running again and someone like Elon Musk sees an already existing populist movement. That is important. And right now, this will actually be clips on YouTube. That could never have happened. I mean, I was literally deplatformed for having Carrie Lake on in a midterm. That's why we couldn't stream the elections. So to say that, well, that's because of Biden, are you giving Biden credit for Elon Musk buying X and bringing you back? Because I think that you got to give some credit here if you want to build a coalition. Can you build a coalition with the people going, hey, we are really anti-censorship and we're really hesitant to get back in bed with the party that pushed for all of it? Because there are other people, not as popular as you, who've also been deplatformed and replatformed as a result.
No, I'm not giving Biden credit. All I'm saying is you attribute that to Trump or for Republicans being in power. All I'm saying is one's got nothing to do with the other. And actually, it was a response. Musk buying Twitter was a reaction to the overreach of the Democrats because they banned the president from Twitter. And I would add to that.
So that means it does have something to do with Trump. If Elon Musk buying Twitter is a direct response to Democrat overreach by banning Donald Trump, then that means free speech in 2025 can be directly attributed to Donald Trump because he is this cultural force. So on some level, in some roundabout way, in some limited degree of separation, you can attribute this back to Donald Trump. I think, I don't know, I feel like Fuentes isn't giving Trump enough credit here.
Also, censorship is a big problem. I don't think we're in the clear with Rumble or Twitter. There's going to be a lot of regulatory. Either. Yeah. And what is Trump doing to solidify this free speech beachhead that you have built, that Elon has built? Nothing. Was that in the big, beautiful bill? Is the FCC getting?
Yeah, we still need Section 230 reform. We still need big tech censorship legislation. No, he's right. Trump is not doing anything to solidify this long term. So he's not wrong about that. We need initiative.
On top of that, they flirted with doing that in 2020 when they said they were going to do Section, what is it, 270 or 280
Section
or whatever? They talked about doing that. They never did it. And so that's my problem where, and I'm with you, like,
well, no, can I just pause that because that's kind of in my realm of expertise because this is something where I've been here this entire time.
Totally.
Right? And not to take credit, but certainly a pioneer in being demonetized and hiring. My biggest expense, especially coming up, was legal outside of payroll because I saw this type of censorship coming. I'm the only one who was named in the Facebook files by name. That's how I met my lawyer. The Twitter files and Susan Wojcicki and Congress women. I don't know if there were any men. I know there were a few women. I think Pelosi and what's her name, the Hirono, the lady from Hawaii who always talks about sex, asking for me to be. Have you ever had sexual relations with someone? That's how she opens every single hearing. It's like, how horny are you, lady? So that is something that I've lived through, and I think you're maybe discounting how bad it can get. And 230 is important, right? I've issued a prescription on how to fix that. And yeah, I'm disappointed that there hasn't been something fully solidified, but I would say there's a reason you're back. There's a reason that people are not afraid to speak out. And people like Trump, people who are more populist, the populists who exist on the right, they listen to their base. And I think it's good that you're pushing him. But what would be enough? In other words, would there be a threshold enough so that you don't just sort of, elope with the Ro Khannas and the Bernie bros of the world?
It's not about eloping. And I would say, what does enough look like? I would know it when I saw it. It would be not like bombing Iran is like a punchline for what Israel wants. That's pretty bad. I would say that not mass deporting people. You don't need to deport 10 million in 1 year, but 1 million per year. And how about anything and literally anything on free speech. You know, Ron DeSantis had some legislation and Texas had some legislation about free speech. Could we get something like that, regulatory or legislative? You know, I just look across the board and maybe this addresses the heart of the matter. I sort of look at Trump and I say, I see what you have done for them. Can you bless us in the same way? Because they will move heaven and earth to lower the corporate tax rate. They will move heaven and earth to give $1 trillion for AI, and they will give Saudi Arabia, non-NATO major defense ally. They'll give Qatar security guarantee. They'll bomb Iran for Israel. They'll bomb Yemen for Israel. What will you do for us? A middle-class tax cut? Will you give us law and order, National Guard, mass deportation? Like, how about pick one, something? So, you know, maybe we just differ an approach, because I think you share these frustrations, but you're saying, let's work with them, let's not burn it all down. And you look at me as someone that's saying, let's throw the baby out with the bathwater. And I get where you're coming from, but
is that a wrong assessment? Because and first off, I do want to correct, because it does matter. 2 million are gone. A lot of people self-deported, which to me is like a magic trick.
No.
Yep, 2 million are gone. And
that's fake.
And a 94%. Okay, well, I'll make sure the references are available. And if people disagree, they can check that out. But there's a lot of self-deportation going on. Also, a 93 to 99% reduction. So if 1 million, 2 million are gone, I would argue the number is 2 million, and you reduce it, I don't think that's marginal. And I think that's probably the biggest issue if you want to preserve a country. Is it enough? Is it ideal? No, but it's better than another 15 million.
Honestly, 2 million self-deportations really wouldn't surprise me that much. I wouldn't be that shocked about it. Really, like, you can just, I mean, think about it. Trump is threatening to round your family up, throw you in a detention center, separate you from your kids, put you through this process with the federal government, with ICE, with Customs and Border Patrol, wrangle you, rough you up, grab your genitals, all this kind of stuff, and then ship you off back to Mexico. It's like, you came here over Biden, you probably made $70,000, $80,000, you know, maybe more than that in 4 years under Biden. You're cruising. You're fine. You can just get in your little Toyota, whatever, your Toyota pickup, drive 100 or 200 miles across the southern border back into Mexico, and you know, it's just like, it wouldn't surprise me. I don't know if that's exactly how that works, but it's like, it wouldn't surprise me if there was millions of self-deportations. Really, like, they come here, they work, they get their money, send remittances back home, save a little bit, and then they get back in their truck and drive back across the border when Trump decides he wants to enforce the law. It's better to go back home as opposed to get rounded up by ICE, busted, separated from your family, and then have to be forced back into Mexico and go through this whole, you know, customs process. So, yeah, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if 2 million, especially over a year of this kind of stuff, I wouldn't be surprised if 2 million self-deported. I don't know if I trust that number, because I don't know where that number came from, and I don't know how the hell they would get that number, but it wouldn't surprise me.
And the people who brought in 15 million are the people you are suggesting to be part of a coalition after it's burned down. So what's the prescription? What does it look like when you say throw the baby out with the bathwater? What does it look like? You get Trump out, you get 4 years of Kamala, right? If you had your way, 4 more years of Newsom. What does it look like? I'm asking you for the prescription, because I'll tell you, mine is primaries. Mine is having people who listen to their base. Mine is making sure that we can make incremental change. The biggest disappointments would be H-1Bs for sure. The big 600,000 Chinese students, huge disappointment. Section 230, right? I have prescriptions.
But Trump is doing all that, Crowder. Trump is the one doing all these things, and he's working hand and fist with the people who want those things as well. I don't know if that's the right analogy or the right metaphor, but that is exactly what Trump is doing. He is working in concert with the people who are asking for these things. None of this is a surprise. This is what Fuentes has been saying from the start. Crowder still has way too much faith in Trump. Trump is with the special interests. Trump is with the globalists. Trump is with Elon Musk and Silicon Valley. Trump is with Israel. So you can try to spin it any which way you want. You think the 600,000 Chinese students is like some kind of coincidence? You think that happened just by chance? No, Trump wanted that to happen. Okay, you think these H-1B visa workers that are here are getting all these tech jobs, stealing jobs from us? You think that's like by coincidence? No, that's what Elon Musk wants. That's what Silicon Valley wants. None of this is by chance. All of this is by design. So he keeps acting like, oh, this is a failure, or this is a mistake. This is what they said they were going to do from the beginning, from the start. So we can't he cannot act surprised or act like this is some kind of failure. He knew all about this last year. He knew about this, a year ago, before Trump won the election. So anyways, it's just this whole like, oh, Trump is failing, but we got to support him still. Trump has shown his hand.
For all of those, what is yours? What does that look like? Revolution or coalition, and then burn it down, throw the baby out with the bathwater. The alternative is, that's where I think I'm missing you.
Here's my prescription. I just think that we need the young people to climb the ladder. I want to march through the institutions, get them in the college Republicans, to the campaigns, to the congressional offices, the think tanks. I think that we need to engage in primaries. In 2026, I'm going to be very active, and we're going to tell everybody who's America first and who isn't, and who to vote for. And I think the people that are not America first, I think they should lose their elections. In 2028...
So do I.
Yeah, okay. So then, we agree on that. In 28, I think we should back a presidential candidate who is going to basically emulate what Trump did in 16, which is anti-corruption, America first, close the borders. And if that person can make inroads with the left, I think that's an interesting idea, because maybe the area of disagreement is there are a lot of people in our right-wing coalition who are kind of part of the problem. I would say there are, like, for example, when Trump bombed Iran, you had like 70% of Republicans supporting that. That's a load of crap. Yeah. And you have a lot of Republicans.
I'm okay with the
Iran. I know you are, and I've heard your argument. We could have that one out, but like, I think that's a huge problem. And I think that there's a lot of people that, they're going to vote for Trump literally no matter what. And what that does is it creates moral hazard, because then Republicans know that they can come in, they can screw us forever. And I guess the question is, for me, my prescription is like, I want results now. If you don't give them to us, we don't care. We will burn it down. And I'm being the unreasonable person in the room. I feel like you, because you're being reasonable, you are allowing the establishment to get away with everything. And they'll always be stringing you along, telling you, oh, well, it's better than the alternative. Well, in the next 2 years, we're going to get it. 2 million, that's fake. That's from the community survey. They polled 65,000 people. There's a response bias. It's not happening. And you say, well, it's better than nothing. It almost isn't, because what happens? We get a Democrat in 4 years anyway.
Nick is really going hard here. He's really letting it rip. I love it. This is the side of Fuentes that I want to see. Back and forth, letting it rip, riffing, laying out all the facts, doing it in a precise and succinct manner, and doing it with tenacity, with boldness, with aggression. I like this. I like this kind of, we don't want the Dinesh D'Souza, you get your turn, I get mine, we're going to have a mediator. No, we want to get on the carpet and roll it out.
Second, I'm not saying it's better than nothing. I'm saying that it's better than what you suggested was a superior alternative, Kamala Harris. That's the standard that we do need to use here, because you said Kamala Harris would be a better choice. I'm not saying it's better than nothing, good enough. I mean, you're talking to Dan Crenshaw. Will never be back on this show because I called him to task on the TAPS Act. I was like, well, how is this not red flag laws? No, there's no one who likes those in positions of authority who betray their base. And I think that base, by the way, is a pretty big coalition. It includes conservative. It's bigger than ever with Donald Trump. Donald Trump isn't really a classical conservative. I think it's better than Kamala Harris. And I can't think of anyone less America first than who you suggested, Ro Khanna. That's why I bring it up. That's why I bring it.
You're getting hung up on that.
Okay, so any member of the Democrat Party. I can't think of anyone less America first than the current Democrat Party. Republicans are flawed. I believe that, go through it, Warren, Kamala Harris, who you said would be a beter choice, Gavin Newsom, Whitmer. I believe they fundamentally hate everything about America.
True.
I can't name one thing.
I'm not talking, Ro Khanna, I'm not talking about him specifically. And like I said, I'm not even talking about Thomas Massie. I'm using them as an example, as a model. Well, as a model, because as sort of a proof of concept, because you have a Republican and a Democrat who, by the way, I don't even agree with them on most things. Like, I criticize Thomas Massie a lot. But it's an example of bipartisanship on a populist issue, an anti-elite issue that everybody supports. And who is against it? The Republican establishment, Trump, Johnson. And I'm saying that's an example of cooperation where the right can maybe lean into these issues that, you know, maybe they're nonpartisan issues and rally everybody against the establishment in our own party. And it's just, to me, that's always the disconnect, is you want to talk about...
Yeah, Crowder is getting way too hung up on partisan politics, which is a very like rudimentary binary that people have been using to understand politics for a long time, and it hasn't really accomplished anything for us. It's always like this left-right thing. No, it's Americans versus the system. And there are certain left-right, there are certain times when the juxtaposition or the differences between the left and the right are irreconcilable. For example, transgenderism, gender ideology, wokeism, illegal immigration, open borders, that kind of stuff. Yeah, that is a left-right issue. There is no room for cooperation on those things whatsoever. But when it comes to things that are like things doing with the economy, standard of living, populism, those kinds of fighting the elite, fighting censorship, those kinds of things, that's an elites versus Americans issue. And Crowder is observing these genuine populist grievances that you can identify across the political spectrum as being a left-right thing when they're really not. This is a populist versus establishment thing. And to the extent you can unite Americans on fundamental issues relating to cost of living, foreign wars, various other, Medicare, subsidized housing, affordable housing, groceries, these sorts of things, this isn't really a left-right issue. This is something that affects all of us. And so Fuentes is saying we need to build a big coalition that includes all people who in the political body who can kind of agree on these things in order to force the political class, force the establishment to, on both sides, to capitulate to our demands. And, you know, Crowder is he's so stuck in this like rudimentary left versus right binary. He's talking about things that don't have to do with populism. Yes, there's problems on the left that have to do with immigration, wokeism, for sure. But if we can scratch those issues and sideline those in favor of agreement on just a limited number of actual populist issues that affect all Americans, there is some room for cooperation there, this is actually good, because this is the way you're supposed to look at politics. It's about getting what you want. It's not just about left versus right. It's about acting in your own self-interest, figuring out what's going to work for you in the long run. And you know, Crowder, he's very like narrow-minded on this like left versus right dichotomy.
Kamala Harris and Ro Khanna, and I'm saying let's imagine a different scenario.
No, I'm not. I don't want to talk about them. You brought them up, and repeatedly so.
You brought them up.
I brought.
Yeah, Crowder brought them up.
You. Come on, let's be fair. I disagree with you. I understand your approach, though, too. I understand your approach because I feel that way, like I said, about the conservative guard in media. In other words, we'd be pretty much on the same page. Anyone in conservative media, and we've seen it where they are gatekeepers, but there's a mechanism to fix that. And we've seen that change. And Rumble is a big part of that. And I agree with you. More needs to be done about Section 230. But I brought them up because you use those examples. And as someone who believes that they fundamentally disdain America, Kamala Harris, to be fair, she's really dumb. So she may not actually know what she believes or thinks. But I do believe that like a Whitmer hates America. I do believe that a socialist like Bernie does. And I know people say he's a populist, but I don't go along with that. But I understand your point. Let's just chalk that up to a disagreement. There are some other areas if we want to go through where we probably agree, probably disagree, because I think you presented it pretty well. I just think we disagree on that, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure.
So some of the positions that you've presented, for me, where I think we might disagree, but you could clarify, have given me pause. Second Amendment. That's a big one to me, a fundamental one, because I come from a country, I would also say socialized healthcare, because I've put several family members 6 feet under who would have lived in the United States, being raised in Quebec. It's awful. But the Second Amendment, considering the amount of threats, and we've talked about this everyone has since Charlie Kirk, right? People just see the one that got through. I would imagine that you live under perpetual threat and need extra forms of security. I probably have that right.
Yes.
Yeah. And so for me, Second Amendment is pivotal. And I do see some rhetoric, not just from you, but from some people who sort of dismissive that is disconcerting. I'd like to roll a clip on this and then give you the floor to clarify, because we probably actually agree more than we disagree.
Sure. There's this question of our government has no efficacy and it's not responsive to the needs or the wants of the people. So it's not really a democracy, and it also isn't working. So what do you do in that situation? Well, people start to say, and this is, as you know, this is the natural evolution of things. The people cry out for a tyrant. The people cry out for a dictator. Give us change. Give us reform. And I certainly feel that. I think that's compelling. I'm a little skeptical of it as time goes on, because as I get older and more mature, I think we maybe take for granted the institutions that we've built up. And maybe I've become ironically more conservative in my disposition and saying, like, maybe let's not race ahead of ourselves and get rid of things which have been around for hundreds of years. I would argue the constitutional system is already impaired because it's being abused by all the other organs of government. Even the Supreme Court voted 8-1 that said these injunctions are out of control. And you've got these like procedural things in the Senate, the filibuster. The president can't fire as many people as he'd like to fire without all this oversight. It's like, we do need an executive organ of government. So I would say that we should start with a more powerful president. And I would not be opposed to, something like a king that sits over.
I was about to give him credit that he brought up kings, but no, he's right. I think on some level we can't just race ahead and like overthrow the government and install like a dictator who's going to arrest and, deport all his political opponents. Like that's not the answer. The answer is we need to find a way to formally and gradually give the president more power and see how drastically that changes the political landscape and the political environment and how government functions. And if we feel like, okay, the president has enough power, now we'll leave it there. But there has to be some checks and balances, but it can't be like the president is completely restrained or castrated by the courts and the legislative branch. It can't work like that.
The presidency. I think that maybe they didn't get it wrong, but I think maybe we've outgrown a lot of those considerations. I'll even go as far as to say something like the Second Amendment. I mean, and maybe I'd get criticized for this, but I'm just free thinking here. Ideally, you would want a society that is so orderly. Do you really want people running around with guns all the time? I mean, I know the argument about, and I am pro Second Amendment, I have guns, but something like that, it's like that is a clear instance where the left kind of makes a point about how we've outgrown some of the things that are in there. I'm going to get a lot of shit for saying that, but I just think that's true. In like a modern city, should everybody be packing heat like that? I mean, ideally, you'd have so much public order, it wouldn't be necessary.
Okay.
None of what he said there was crazy, by the way. Much of what he said there I agree with. Besides maybe the king part, I don't want a king, but a lot of what he said was right. Especially with the Second Amendment stuff. Like, I am pro Second Amendment. I am pro having a gun. But it's just sad that our society has become so lawless and violent and chaotic that like you need to have a gun with you to survive a train ride that's like a 15-minute transit between Boston and New York. And if you don't have a gun, you might get fucking killed. Or you need to have a gun with you whenever you're walking around in like some sketchy downtown alley, where you need to have a gun with you whenever you're walking through like some low-income neighborhood because someone might try to rob you. Like, it is sad that we live in this kind of society. It shouldn't be like that ideally in a country as wealthy as the United States. But I agree with his point. I agree with the sentiment. Hopefully Crowder doesn't take that in bad faith.
First, let me just be really clear on my position. I do like a place where people are running around with guns all the time because I've been a place where they haven't, Canada, and it's a nation of pussies. Also, I will tell you this. On this topic, I have seen the video where the police, I don't think police showed up at your house. One of my producers here, who's a lawyer, said people should watch that as textbook on how to deal with police. And he's not Jewish. He's Greek. One of the very rare Greek lawyers. He's
let's
not very
go.
good.
I like him.
Yeah.
I like one of my best friends is Greek. We love the Greeks. The Greeks are amazing. Shout out to the Greeks, man.
He's not very good, so I wouldn't hire him in a divorce. She'll get everything. I do want to give you, in other words, I want to let people know that this is not a position taken from someone who has not been under threat. But I will say this, what I heard there and in watching you, concerning to me. Because what I see communicated is in your ideal utopia, to use the word, would involve a much stronger state with much more executive power. And I agree on the executive authority, but the end game, a much stronger state and much softer civilian arms, softer Second Amendment rights. And it sounds a lot to me like the left saying, well, it was for muskets and we can just revise it. Explain if that's a mischaracterization. How do we know when we decide, and how do we decide we probably don't want people running around with guns anymore?
Well, I'm not in favor of gun control in America. I just don't even think that's practical. It's what, 400, 500 million guns or something. I don't think it's possible to control guns here. It's kind of gotten away. But I will just say it really comes from a feeling. I don't really have a fleshed out, like, hot take on it. But I do think about a modern city like New York or D.C. or L.A. and think, where do we draw the line? I know in Texas, for example, you have open carry. And I've done it. I was down in Texas with John Doyle, actually, years ago before we became enemies. And we were walking around with guns in our back pocket in the gas station. And I'm thinking, I actually don't know that I want to live in a city where people are literally walking around with guns hanging out of their pants. I guess I already do live in one. I live in Chicago. They don't do it legally.
Well, I was going to say that might just be a Chicago thing, because everyone in this studio is strapped right now, and I love it. Like you're almost making me erect in your description.
I caught myself. I'm like,
that's weird, but okay. It's like this thing that's hard on for guns. I don't know. I don't know. Whatever. Some people have this like gun fetish. I don't. For me, a gun is like nothing more than a utility, and you only ever want to use it in like an explicit case of life or death. But it does create a kind of different consciousness. You know what I mean? I don't know. Like just around trust and social solidarity. Like, is it good to live in a society? Like, think about Japan. Is everybody there walking around with a gun? Is everybody there walking around with a knife? Probably not, because there's high social trust. There's virtue. There's morality. There's a sense of responsibility. There's a sense of community. There's a sense of togetherness in Japan that doesn't exist here. And I feel like that is reified or worsen when everybody has a weapon on them. You know what I mean? It's like we already feel a breakdown in social trust. We already have a very mentally ill society. People are on drugs. People are on all kinds of substances. And then on top of that, they have guns and they have phone addiction. So it's like, I don't know, this like cocktail of different stimuli, and then people also have lethal weapons on them too. It's like, you don't really ideally want to live in a society like that. I get the point he's making. Steven Crowder's looking at it from a more pragmatic angle, but spiritually, I agree with what he's saying. We want a virtuous, honorable, safe, high-trust society, and I feel like it's harder to achieve that when everybody has a weapon.
Hey, that sounds like the South Side. It sounds like Inglewood, actually. But, so I guess I'm in favor of like concealed carry. We should be able to own guns. Maybe it's a cultural thing, because I did grow up in the Midwest, and my parents actually trained people in how to use firearms, but we're not like a gun nut family. Forgive me if that's a pejorative statement, but we're not enthusiasts.
Neither am I.
And so there's something to me about it that I just feel like at a certain point it becomes less safe more than more safe. So, but like I said, I don't really have a fleshed out take. I'm ideologically in favor of the Second Amendment. I do support it. I don't have any prescriptive gun control measures. I just think there's a limit to it, and I get a little uncomfortable by some of it sometimes.
Okay, well, I think that's a fair answer if it's just sort of a feeling thing. I think that in combination, hopefully you can understand where it's prescriptive as far as a stronger state or theocracy or I feel like I know I've heard you use the word dictatorship. It could be, again, tongue-in-cheek with softer Second Amendment rights. That's a huge concern to me. But I think that's a fair answer if you don't actually have a prescription for it. All right, I would ask that you not create any kind of a coalition with someone who would take any guns away, because I have them hanging out of my pockets all the time, as a matter of fact. I've created new pockets for my guns.
I keep forgetting you're Canadian. That seems like a big hang, maybe because you come from a country without it, but I am
American. I was raised in the land of pussies. So I was born in Detroit and was raised in the land of the spineless from 3 to 18.
Trans-American, huh? You identify as American, huh? No,
yeah. Well, I've actually tried to publicly denounce my Canadian citizenship many times, and I don't know how to. I've just said it on air, like I denounce it. I'm so ashamed of that. And my mom, who was French Canadian, I mean, gosh, many decades ago, is embarrassed by it. So I'm not Canadian. I'm never running for office. I just don't want people to actually think I'm Canadian, because that would be awful.
Okay, sure thing. Well, I mean, me, as far as just one last...
We agree. Look, Canadians are awful. We have to agree. They're the worst.
But they're your people, Steve. They're your
not
people.
Oh, son of a bitch. All right. I hate that country. It is awful. It's also, by the way, probably why I'm much more in favor of a two-party system, because I come from where I was raised, a parliamentary system. And when I had it explained to me, I said, so someone can become the leader of this country with like 28% of the vote. How is this not retarded? You know, and it doesn't work very well either. It doesn't mean that either is perfect, but yeah, Second Amendment is a really big thing. But I also understand too, because I was under that impression coming from a place where not a lot of people had guns. But I will tell you this: my prescription is there is no limit. You would probably consider me an extremist on that, and almost all mass shootings take place in gun-free zones. The lowest number you'll find is 94%. Increased gun laws do not at all correlate with decreased crime. Matter of fact, quite often the opposite. And guns save far more lives each year than they take. So that's one of those, if you're a pragmatist, which I know you've said, guns, homicides each year. And this is my soapbox, and I'll get off just since I know you said you're not convinced either way. There'll be anywhere from 15 to 20-something thousand each year homicides. Defensive uses, low end, 500,000 to 3 million. And that's a low count, because so many defensive uses of firearms, like you mentioned, just someone showing it, right? They don't need to be fired. They save far more lives than they take. And that's one where I say, yeah, I want an armed society, because I know what it looks like where they're not. And in Canada, Montreal, where I was raised, they pretty much invented the school shooting. We had École Polytechnique, Concordia. I had friends at Dawson College where there was a guy who roamed the Maritimes with like a shotgun and shot multiple people for days, and no one could do shit. That's how bad it is. So that's me making a pitch, since you seem like you're reasonably open to it.
Well, I agree with all that. I guess the feeling comes from, you know, there's this sense in American conservatism of like, well, they can't take the guns. And I feel like there's a sense that guns are going to protect us from tyranny, and I feel like they haven't. I feel like, especially someone like myself, the government can touch you. The government can do what they want to you. The government took my money, put me on a no-fly list, and if they wanted to get me, they could get me. Right. And so I just...
They have
I
gotten
feel like
you.
People...
They have gotten you.
Yeah.
And they've gotten me, too. You know, thank God we're here. But no, and my heart goes out to you. I mean, being subpoenaed by the ATF and being threatened to be investigated by the FBI, along with the Nashville police, they can. But then apply that to society at large, and you end up like Australia with COVID camps.
Yeah, and I'm not against all guns. I just think that conservatives need to think beyond that issue, because they tend to consider that the last line of defense. I feel like if you lose everything else, the guns won't protect you either. That's why I'm more proactive. Like, we really need to do other things, and that's why the Second Amendment's less of a concern to me.
Yeah, and I understand that. I would just say, if you're not pretty steadfast on that, you will lose everything else. Historically, there's no exception, and that's why it's so important to me. But I think we're pretty close on that. And maybe if ever you're around, I can take you shooting. What about this guy? I have a little gun right here. I had to take it out because when I sit down, it digs into my gut fat and leaves a gun imprint. That's a cute little gun, right? That doesn't intimidate you. Look at this tiny little thing.
Is that a pocket rocket? Is that a 380?
It's a little Kel-Tec. if you come down, we can shoot it sometime. And they won't even know about it in Chicago. Though don't carry illegally. Okay, so that's a big issue for me. I would say the biggest issue, since you can go back when I was a teenager as well. We share that in common. Second Amendment, First Amendment. Again, socialized healthcare, very important to me just because of the results. I understand where you're coming from, saying that our system is broken. I just have seen how much more broken it can be. Immigration, I think, is probably the biggest issue of our time, both legal and illegal. I think we agree, maybe different methods, if that's fair. But I am for you. I don't want Texas to look like India. We have a segment, Eye on India, where it's pretty much just human beings throwing shit. It's a terrible, terrible place. And I don't believe that they're smarter. I don't believe that we should be replacing Americans. So I think we're on board there. But freedom of speech, big thing for me. The fact that we're able to have this conversation and the fact that I will take so much crap for even having it. I hope that you can appreciate it, and I would do it again. That's a big one. Now, I want to play a clip for you that The Hill took, and they edited some stuff in this clip. I'm sure you're aware. And then towards the end of this, for fun, I want to go through some rapid-fire viral clips that have no context so that you can address them, because these are the ones that people see of you sometimes.
Sure,
So this is the one from The Hill that they ran regarding, I guess you would say freedom of speech, but seems pretty severe. And then I would like to roll, not the whole 2-hour show, but a longer clip so that people can see what they cut out, and then we can talk about it. Is that fair?
Sure,
Here's the Hill clip with, I think the two hosts who presented it, I think one of them is gay or just acts like it.
There is an occult element at the high levels of society, and specifically among the Jews. So many of the people that are perpetrating the lies and the destruction on the country, they are evildoers. They are people that worship false gods. They are people that practice magic or rituals or whatever. And more than anything, those people need to be, when we take power, they need to be given the death penalty. Straight up. And
this is still his funniest clip to this day. Like, this is one of his funniest clips. The one on Martin Luther King and segregation, that was a pretty funny clip, but this one is hysterical.
I'm far more concerned about that than I am about even non-white people or mass migration. These people that are communing with demons and engaging in this sort of witchcraft and stuff, and these people that are suppressing the name Christ and suppressing Christianity, they must be absolutely annihilated when we take power. This is God's country. This is Jesus' country.
Right.
This is not the domain of atheists or devil worshippers or perfidious Jews. This is Christ's country.
Right.
Now, for those watching, that is what The Hill ran, right? And of course, people were horrified. They did edit out a very particular portion of it, which I think is relevant. So forgive me if you need to take a sip of water. I want to play the longer version, and let's see if people can see what was edited out, and then give you the floor to explain it.
Sure. And it just makes me sick to my stomach. There is an occult element at the high levels of society, and specifically among the Jews. And whenever I see that stuff, it just makes me want to proclaim louder and more firmly and more rigidly that it is nothing other than Jesus Christ. No pagan stuff, no false gods, no deities, no demons.
Right.
It is Jesus Christ. And and we need to start saying that name more. I feel like I haven't said his name enough on the show lately. But that is what breaks the spell. It's the name. It's the name Jesus. Talk about it. Say it.
Right.
Pray to him. Talk about the sacrifice on the cross. That's the answer. Because so many of the people that are perpetrating the lies and the destruction on the country, they are evildoers. They are people that worship false gods. They are people that practice magic or rituals or whatever. And more than anything, those people need to be, when we take power, they need to be given the death penalty. Straight up. And I'm far more concerned about that than I am about even non-white people or mass migration. These people that are communing with demons and engaging in this sort of witchcraft and stuff, and these people that are suppressing the name Christ and suppressing Christianity, they must be absolutely annihilated when we take power. 100%. I'm not calling for political violence, but that cannot have any quarter in our society. And we need to put up We need to put up a crucifix
That part they cut out.
in every home, in every room, in every school, and every government office to signal Christ's reign over our country. Not that God needs it, but it must be outwardly expressed from the interior that this is God's country. This is Jesus' country. This is not the domain of atheists or devil worshippers or perfidious Jews. This is Christ's country.
When you listen to the whole clip, it doesn't sound half as bad. That's the thing. Like, that's why you have to be... Well, I mean, it isn't even really his fault. They cut that clip up and then made it sound worse than what it was. When you actually listen to like the 30 or 40 seconds before the clip that went viral on social media, like the 30 or 40 seconds that they cut out that came right before it, it makes it sound a lot more reasonable. So it isn't even really his fault necessarily for not being consistent in what he says. It's more so just, this is the society we live in now. This is the game that's being played, the information war.
So, anyway, I know the guy earlier said, can you be agnostic and be America first? I'm amending my answer. No, you must be a Christian. And you must submit to Christianity.
Okay. So, and I know it feels tedious, but this is the game that the media plays. I noticed they cut out the part where you said you were not calling for political violence, which I think is an indictment on the Hill. But I would also
right,
ask,
100%.
You say that, but you also talk about executing people. So if you're not advocating political violence as it relates to putting people to death, how would you do it?
Well, that was a few years ago, and I would say that I'm not really in favor of the death penalty at all anymore. But I remember that monologue well because I saw a lot of this satanic occult stuff. I'm talking about like Pizzagate stuff. Like, we have to acknowledge there are a lot of people in the elite that are straight up devil worshipers. I firmly believe in this like eyes wide shut kind of thing that does happen. I don't think it's necessarily a grand conspiracy, but
no, there's spiritual warfare for sure.
Right.
For sure.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot of those types of people out there, especially in like Hollywood. I saw it up close and personal when I was with Ye, and I just hate that stuff so much.
Wait a second.
And
I want to give you the answer, but what do you mean you saw it up close? Were you at an eyes wide shut party with Ye?
No, I wasn't at a party, but you know, being with him, you see, like with Balenciaga, they did that at Balenciaga.
Okay, all right.
They had that like S&M teddy bear, and there's things like that. It's like a wink and a nod to basically just evil, just straight up evil. And so no, that
Lil Nas X. We know about Lil Nas X. Sabrina Carpenter talking about killing men while she's recording in a Catholic church. I mean, this kind of perversion of holiness, this perversion of virtuousness and righteousness, this kind of stuff, it needs to be banned. Like, straight up, I agree. It needs to be banned. It needs to be ridiculed. It needs to be mocked. These people are the enemy of Christ. They're the enemy of the spirit of our nation. They want our country to be divided, fallen, vulnerable, internally weakened, and these people cannot represent our culture. They cannot represent our culture. They cannot determine our culture. They just, under no circumstances can these people be the pioneers or the frontiersmen and frontierswomen of American pop culture. So I agree with what he's saying overall. The death penalty part, yeah, let's not take it there, but overall the sentiment, he's not wrong. He's absolutely correct.
They always do this. I do a show every night, as you know,
Miley
and you
Cyrus.
sometimes get whipped up and you say something like that. So I don't know that I have a policy of like when I get in charge, I'm going to give everyone the death penalty. But suffice to say, the people that are involved in that kind of stuff, they can't be negotiated with. It's not going to be a power sharing agreement with people that worship Moloch and Baal and the Epsteins and who is it, the Podestas. Like, those people are going to have to be like imprisoned or something like that, because that stuff just makes me sick to my stomach. So that was the gist, but it's not like my program is, we're going to become president, that we're going to kill a bunch. I'm not in favor of the death penalty even at all, really.
Okay. So even if let's say, a perfect world coalition, you reach that point, the Nick Fuentes government, you wouldn't be executing people for...
I mean, I don't agree with giving just anyone the death penalty. But I think there are certain people like there are times when the death penalty is completely acceptable, I think, right? If you want order, That's one way to get it. I'm not completely against I am not completely against the death penalty. Just want to make that clear.
For not being Christian.
No, and that's not what that was about. I mean, even in that clip, I'm talking specifically about the occult, which I hate.
Okay, but you wouldn't execute people for worshiping false gods either. You wouldn't execute people at all.
No, not at all.
Okay,
no.
All right. Yeah, because for me, I mean, I would just go, oh, well, it's interesting they cut out the I'm not advocating political violence, but then I still come back to, I did say execute, so I do want to ask him about that.
Yeah, it's an unfortunate statement, but it's one of those things. If I could take it back, I would. But that occult, I don't know about you, but when I see that kind of stuff, like it pisses me off. When I see like Order of Nine Angles and stuff like that,
yeah,
on like in my bones, I hate it.
Yeah, I hate evil wherever it may be, and I do believe, this is my belief, that the progressive left is a death cult. That's the only common denominator that I see. If you look at the abortion policy, if you look at the mutilation of children, if you look at, even it's whenever you see an LGBTQ flag next to a country that's represented by Hamas. Now, I'm not saying all Palestinian people. I'm saying those two can't be reconciled, where you go, how do they have this? How do they have these? Well, the only commonality is that they can't stand the United States. And it's a death cult. And I think what does bother me a little more sometimes is I see a lot of immature Christians. And I know you've talked about this as a Catholic who obviously has much more of an understanding of your theology, or maybe sometime we can have a conversation about that. We agree or disagree. But I see a lot of young Christians who come in and they think that everything is like satanic, like a proactive satanic worship. I'm going, well, hold on. The biggest threat is making yourself God. Like abortion is just sacrifice at the altar of self. Are there people involved in the occult knowingly? Yeah, but there are far more people who succumb to temptation and evil and worship the devil without knowing it. And I think a lot of people kind of sound nuts and unreasonable because they don't understand theology sometimes.
Yeah, no, and I agree with that. To me, it's completely irredeemable when it's explicit. Because like you say, there are a lot of people that do it unknowingly, and maybe it's guided by the best intentions. The road to hell is paved with good intentions. It might be out of empathy or, some kind of ideology. And I agree with you, but to me, it's like that explicit occult stuff. It's, that to me is irredeemable. I mean, it's obviously, whereas Christians, we don't believe it's actually irredeemable. But to me, like I said in the clip, there can be no quarter for that, especially in the halls of power. As far as the left is concerned, I mean, you're right about that, but I don't hate it as much, actually.
The left?
Yeah.
Okay. No, I do.
The left is evil. I agree with you, but that other stuff is just on its next level.
No. Obviously, anyone who's like, doing a bloodletting devil worship ceremony is the worst. I'm just saying that I believe the left in general is an evil movement and ideology. And I mean, for proof, look to Canada. It's both evil and a nation of pussies. It's almost hard to make that happen, but somehow they pulled it off. And I also think the coalition that you see with the left and big business, this is where you say donors, but I just mean corporatism, period, like BlackRock. I mean, we had an investigation people can go and watch. Funny enough, McKinsey Company was one where we got a lot of blowback, but BlackRock then threatening Rumble if they don't remove us to take legal action. And I don't even think it was a Jewish lawyer, which is kind of funny, just as an aside. So I think that's why it didn't go anywhere. It wasn't very good. Say what we want about it. They tend to be good as lawyers. That is a really unholy coalition and leads to a lot of our problems with big tech and censorship. I will say this. I find that I agree with you on a lot. And I know you have a lot of time. I don't want to take up too much of your time. I don't know if you saw Coleman Hughes just released this whole thing on you last night. Did you see that?
I did. Yeah.
Yeah. And it seems to me when I saw that they have some sites set on Rumble because they started bringing Rumble Nick. They said it was said like 20 times. And of course, I believe Coleman Hughes works under Barry Weiss and CBS, and they spend a lot of money on YouTube, would have a vested interest in alternative platforms going away. So that kind of raised an eyebrow, and I want to look into it more. But he did say that you, Nick, you'll give one face to the audience on Rumble, and then sometimes a different face when you go on podcasts and moderate quite a bit. Do you think you've been doing that here? Because I know you'll say, well, I could take that back, or do you think it's this is fair and it's consistent?
I think I'm being fair.
Okay.
They've been saying this about me for 10 years, where they say, you're presenting a more normie-friendly face. I would just say I'm a three-dimensional human being. And when you watch a show, it's a performance, and it's me, as you know, well, maybe because you got other people, but for me, it's like
he definitely says things on the show that he wouldn't say on a podcast. Let's just keep it real. Like, there's things he says on his show that he would not say in a one-on-one interview with like a mainstream conservative figure. So I get the point that Coleman Hughes was trying to make. He tried to make it more nefarious, or like it's this big plot and Nick Fuentes is doing this and it's this calculated strategy to go for political power in the long term. It's like scaremongering almost. He's right in that the things he says on his own channel are different than the things he says on, podcasts with other people. It is true that he presents himself a bit differently, a bit more moderately. He's not as verbose. He's not as radical, I guess. But to say this is anything more than just a natural phenomenon, which is a byproduct of the particular venue that he's in, I don't agree with that. I don't think this is like some big conspiracy from Nick to like, okay, I'm going to calculate, I'm going to say exactly this, and I won't say that on this pod. It's just natural. It's just natural human behavior to moderate yourself, to fit into the environment that you're going into. Like, that's just normal human behavior. So anyways, that's my take on it. I don't think it's like this big calculated strategy from Nick. That's how Coleman Hughes was trying to paint it, and I don't think that's what that is.
A room by myself, and when I do a show, I'm just talking to myself. And when I'm talking to myself, you know how it is. You get whipped up and you make jokes or use hyperbole. You're being rhetorical. Like, that tends to happen. Then when you're in a serious conversation where they say, do you want to kill everybody? You're like, no, like, here I was joking, or here I meant this. But no, I think that's a dishonest characterization of it.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you. You've said one time, I think you were giving an interview. It was funny. You said sometimes jokes don't land, and you just were straightforward about it. I know that all too well. Believe me, a crowd full of drunks in Schenectady will let you know when you're 19. Let me ask you, like, what in your mind when you're doing it? Like, what's the perfect joke?
I don't know for me, it's if it makes me laugh.
Yeah.
I mostly do my show for my own sense of humor. Like, the things that I say, it's because I think they're funny, and I literally can't help but I have to say it, and I make myself laugh. And so to me, the best jokes are the ones that I laugh out loud if I watch the clip.
Okay. And do you ever write a joke, or is do you ever think of a perfect structure? Or this is just sort of, you mean these are sort of joking statements?
I don't write jokes. It's all extemporaneous. So if I think of something funny, like just like a funny scenario or a bit, I have to perform and I have to act it out. And sometimes the edgier, let's be honest, if it's edgy, it's funny.
Right.
That's, in my opinion. I mean, I've always had an edgy sense of humor. If it's a little offensive, it's a little bit sharp. Or if the audience doesn't like it, sometimes I like it more if half the audience gets really mad about it.
Yeah.
That's rage bait, you know? So
I understand. That's actually the only reason I have people in the room, because I talk to myself all the time. So it's just so people don't think I'm crazy. Because I don't know about you, most of my ideas usually come to me in the shower or driving. And I think it's that sensory deprivation, right? You ever drive and you go, wait, where was I for an hour? And you have a bunch of things you have to pull over and write down.
Yeah, it's almost like if you're doing something, it like frees a different part of your mind, you know? Because if you're not doing anything, if you're idle, you're a little too in your head. So that's how it works. Yeah,
I think Norm Macdonald said once, he said the perfect joke is where the punchline is the exact same as the setup. And he had a joke about Julia Roberts marrying Lyle Lovett, and the punchline was just when they realized that Julia Roberts had married Lyle Lovett. Like, that was just the punchline. But to me, I think in topical stuff, because I've caught a lot of flack for jokes. And I believe at one point, Matt Walsh even joined, like a bunch of conservatives joined and gave me crap for a tweet. And this is why I say I feel compelled to defend when I go, well, hold on. Even if it's not a joke, it's a statement made in jest. I'm using the term broadly. The one I wrote was, I said, and it was in response to Lena Dunham back then, if an angry feminist is raped in a forest, but no one there to hear it, is she still heinously unattractive? And people got so mad, and conservatives saying, we have to be better than this. I was like, that's a solid bit.
Yeah.
Like, I don't, And then Anna Kasparian, who's been welcomed into the fold with open arms. I don't know why. I was called a garbage person. One of my favorite jokes that I ever wrote, and a lot of it is not necessarily written, was remember Christine Blasey Ford and Brett Kavanaugh? That was a big thing.
Yeah.
And it was something like the setup was like she accused Kavanaugh of attempted rape in a letter to Dianne Feinstein. And I'm paraphrasing. And the letter that she gave to her psychologist contradicts the story that she gave to the New York Times, and that contradicts the story given to her attorney, and the attorney version contradicted with the story that she had given to the authorities, who are still, it should be noted, pursuing the distinct possibility of her being a, quote, dirty, lying whore. And Anna Kasparian goes, I'm better. That's a garbage person who would make that joke. It's just a fact. Christine Blasey Ford was a dirty, lying whore. There's not much more to it than that. Let me go. So on that vein, this is, and I want people to know, don't take this out of context. I want to run some clips completely out of context, the way they have been run as hit pieces on you, so that you can clarify. So this is going to seem really shitty, but I know that people have seen these, and I probably already know the answer, so we can have a bit of fun with it. Here's one that people might have seen. They use against you that the dating is gay thing.
If we're really being honest, never having a girlfriend, never having sex with a woman, really makes you more heterosexual. Because honestly, dating women is gay. Having sex with women is gay. And having sex with men is gay. And it's all gay. And if you want to know the truth, the only really straight heterosexual position is to be an asexual incel.
Now, I have to treat this with the seriousness it deserves. Do you believe that having sex with a woman is gay? Because some could argue that intercourse with a woman is the most heterosexual thing that someone could do.
Well, you would think that by definition, but
yes.
At the same time, it's the closeness with women. I sort of see women as like the abyss, and it's like the longer you stare into them, the more they stare back into you. And
that's an experienced woman.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of these like hypersexual men, they become more like women. They become a little more gay. So yeah, we have to acknowledge there's something very true there. Something very true.
Well, I think the reason people also use this, and it really bothers me. They go, "Oh, Nick is an."
I mean, the point he's making is that like the longer you're with a woman, the more feminized you become, the more domesticated you become. You lose your edge, you lose your aggression, your testosterone levels go down. You start, in your free time, you're cuddling and making out and wearing matching pajamas and snuggling and watching Netflix with your girlfriend, and you're not like out there getting it, going to the gym, hustling real hard, getting a bag, And the point he's making is like it does feminize you, right? Now, it's not gay per se, but he's saying he's associating feminization with being gay. And so using that logic, a lot of men become more feminine, thus become more gay. The longer they're in a relationship with a particular woman, whereas the opposite is true is if you're like a young, virile, single man who's on his grind and he's talking to 5 girls and he's spinning plates and you're driving fast cars and you're benching 315, there's a kind of like juxtaposition there between like the young, aggressive hustler who's on his shit and he's a single guy, he's 25, 26, he's a bachelor, versus like the 45-year-old wife guy who spends his free time with his wife, watching movies, drinking hot chocolate. Like there's a clear juxtaposition between like an Andrew Tate and like a Ben Shapiro, right? I don't know. I get what he's saying, but it's meant to be facetious. It's meant to be a joke.
So, as I understand it, you have always said that you are going to be waiting until you're married. So they take something that's a virtue and use it against you, combined with, I think what you just said was in jest, and go, oh, he's an incel who's gay.
Well, the incel thing is true. I mean, women hate me. Women can't stand me. I'm 5'9". I'm 5'9". Women think I shouldn't exist.
That doesn't matter.
They think I should be dead.
He's 5'9". I thought he was like 5'7".
Yeah, I can see you right now. You've got big hands. No. You have notoriety right now, my friend. You just go do some live shows. They'll be throwing themselves at you, but still maintain that virtue. You have to learn to swat them away. Don't stare into that abyss.
You're right.
But no, that's what they'll do. They'll go, oh, this is, you're not, that's not true. You're not an incel. Not at this point. You choose. You're a choose cell.
A Volcel. I'm Rizless. I have no Riz, Stephen.
Okay. All right. No.
And I won't do it. I won't do the playful banter. I won't.
You won't? All right. I got it. Well, I don't know what I've learned about drip. So neither one of us is wearing a whole lot of drip, but you seem to have a nice watch.
Thanks.
This is the other one that people have talked about. I think it's is this the one with Destiny? I don't know. I put these because they're each like a few seconds. So I'll just play it because people go, ask them about this, and then you can clarify. Again, I assume all of these are in jest. I'd be remiss if I didn't bring it up because then people are like, I can't believe you let him get away with it. All right, roll that one.
They want to get the Medal of Honor, the Congressional Medal of Freedom, because they went out with some average woman and had a couple of kids, and they live in some house where they're watching Disney Plus, and you go to the farmer's market. It's a revolutionary act. I don't think so, Buster. Like, we need to go at the center, and that requires real dedication, real sacrifice that, yes, might involve actually not having kids for some people. Does it ever cross people's mind that in a war, young men die? Is this any different? Is sacrificing a family life different than dying in a war for a political outcome? I don't think so.
And I'm sorry, that's the wrong clip I meant, but we can address that one too. The clip I wanted was of Destiny, about him being based or something. But that one is one that some people obviously would say to bring up because us being replaced, and by the way, I'm not using the term replacement theory because just like nationalists, the left tries to coin that, that advice would maybe fly in the face of fixing the problem of us being replaced demographically.
Yeah, I hear that all the time. And I don't think the solution to demographic replacement is everybody that watches my show has kids. Because even if everybody watches my show has kids, it doesn't solve the problem. It's a political problem. Like, why is our fertility rate low? It's a policy problem. And it's a societal-wide problem. And so I don't like the idea. It's sort of like... you look at how society is, people go, oh, well, if you don't like the way your city is, go move somewhere else or go do something else or change it to voluntary.
I know who you're talking about on that one.
Yeah, I mean, but there's a lot of people that say that. And I think it ignores the reality of politics, which is that if we want to change society, we have to change politics. And a lot of people like to say, no, just be the change you want to see in the world. I don't believe in spontaneous action like that. I think that you do actually need people that are going to need to fight a very difficult battle. And some may have families and some might not, but they have to put the political cause first. And then you can change society by changing the capital. And so that I really don't like when people say, oh, if we all just had kids at the same time, it's like, okay, but who's listening to this? Like 10,000 people? The fertility rate is low globally, and so it's going to need to be addressed by the state.
Yeah, I think people need to do both. Not that I was going in the silly direction, but not to go back into the serious direction. I think people need to do both, and even people who go to war can do both. And I think that you actually can see, it was Andrew Breitbart who I kind of came up under his tutelage because I was just a comedian and he had big Hollywood back then before it was Breitbart trademark anything. And he said that everything was downstream from culture. I've heard people say both downstream and upstream.
I mean, the whole like fertility thing, like it's a class issue as well. Like you have to consider if you're a middle class suburban family, and you have kids who want to go to college, they want to have a thriving career. You're not going to have 5, 6, 7, 8 kids because that's more expensive. Okay, it's harder to put 5, 6, or 7 kids through college versus 1 or 2 kids through college. And if you want to go to college and you want to make money and you want to have a stable career, you're going to have to sacrifice the social element as well, just by virtue of having to work 40, 50, 60 hours and then pay back student loans and make all these commitments to work and make all these commitments to your career. And so if the majority of the population that's beneath the poverty level is Black and Hispanic, Well, naturally, they're going to have more kids because you want more kids to do manual labor, to help with the family business, to take care of the other siblings, right? You want the middle or older child to take care of the toddlers while the mom is at work or while the dad is at work. So, and obviously that's a part of the culture as well. There's an element of culture to that. You know, they want to have a lot of kids and families, and that's kind of the sort of thing. Whereas in the upper class or middle class, people are more focused on career. People are more focused on building wealth. You know, people are more focused on making money and having a home and having a career and getting educated, as opposed to having like 5, 6, or 7 kids. And so a lot of this is a class issue as well. And it's a byproduct of industrialization and a nation that is becoming less religious. You know, religious people tend to value family and things like that more. I mean, there's an element of immigration to it as well, but you can blame the immigration. But if people are only having 1 or 2 kids because they have to work 40, 50, 60 hours a week, pay back student loans, you need a dual income household, a father and a mother who are both paying for a house in order to just get by or to even afford a house. That means the wife is going to have to work, which takes time away from child rearing or having kids or taking care of kids. So, you know, this is just a natural phenomenon of the modern world, of life in the 21st century, you know, fiat currency, the economy, the cost of living. Like, it's a trickle down effect. And, you know, you can blame immigration. That's a part of it too. Unquestionably, immigration plays a huge role in this, but a lot of it is a class issue as well. Poor white people have more children than rich white people or middle class white people. But if 60 or 70% of the white people in this country are middle class or wealthy or whatever, the bottom 30% is not going to be able to make up or reach replacement rate for the white population or the white demographic. So it's a natural byproduct of just life and circumstances. And Nick is right. Like, just getting people to have families, that prescription is not going to work if it means people are going to have to sacrifice their career or making money or, you know, being able to take care of themselves or be independent. Women want to be independent now. Like, this is a huge part of the culture. And women are not just going to willfully give that up if there's no tax break or some kind of like material or social or cultural benefit that comes with that. And, you know, women are more collectivist, right? So if other women can do it, then it's going to incentivize momentum from women in that direction. So it is going to have to be kind of like a top-down and cultural revolution, I think, in order to fix this problem. And I think there will be a solution. There's going to be a push towards it. A lot of people are talking about it now, so we'll see.
Not sure which is correct, but I would argue that's true. And a big reason that birth rates are low is because culturally we have been bombarded with that for a long time, because the world is going to end and it's morally wrong, right? Population is a problem. Overpopulation, that's what we were told for a very long time. So it justified, it was this confluence of that along with the feminist movement and sexual liberation, the idea of taking control of that. And we really saw an anti-natalist country. So I do think culturally it's important. I agree with you. I don't just think be the change you want to seek. I think you need to have a plan and a prescription. I would include in that encouraging people to have families, especially, you know, native-born, not feather Indian, but native-born Americans.
No, I totally agree.
Yeah,
I totally agree with that.
But I understand the point that you're making, that can't be the only thing. But I also don't want to take for granted that there's been some headway made on that, where you actually have a lot of young people now who are very pro-family and understand the necessity. Whereas when you and I mean, you're younger than me, not that much younger than me. When you were young and I was young, that wasn't considered a virtue or a duty at all. As a matter of fact, the opposite. So I've seen the pendulum swing, and I definitely want to continue that momentum.
Yeah, me too. No disagreement.
Okay, this is the one. It's not destiny. It's something about the young milk that people run and go, you got to ask them about it. Okay.
Right when the milk is good, I want to start drinking the milk. Same thing goes with women. I don't want to turn 30 and find some 20-year-old, 29-year-old woman that I have something in common with, and it's like, hey, properly aged, like wine. Women don't age like wine, they age like milk.
Okay, so the last part, everyone says. The first part, people go like, hey, you want that milk when they're young? I mean, we just did a whole segment on Rosh Hashanah where Indian men suck on their own mother's tits as part of a wedding ceremony, which is another reason that we should import none of them. But a joke in jest. People are saying that you actually, you want young women so you can suckle their milk.
Oh, well, no, they are the milk in the analogy. It's not about they age like milk. No, of course not. I think the age of consent should be like 25, honestly. It's like these 20-year-old children are out there getting married and having sex in college. I don't know how anybody's okay with this.
Yeah.
20 years old, that's a child. That's a literal child. And men are having sex with them. It makes me mad, honestly.
Well, now you've gone too far the other way. 25. Like if it's a 20-year-old and a 20-year-old and they get married, and like Mary was pretty. She wouldn't meet that for like another 10 years. We wouldn't have Jesus Christ.
Yeah, but now with the with the seed oils and everything, it's different. So I think it should be way, way higher. It pisses me off. 20 years old, that's a literal kid. I can't believe you would even say that, to be honest.
What? Two 20-year-olds getting married?
That's a literal child, Stephen. How could she consent? She's 20?
Oh, okay. All right. You're being facetious.
I'm teasing. I thought we were being funny.
I didn't know. Well, yeah, I know, but you were just doing the opposite of it and considering that people will take it seriously. I said, I don't want them to take that. And they're like, see, Nick is inconsistent. No.
I thought we were joking.
Yeah. No, that is one thing, too. Like, it's just older women who are jealous that men like younger women. So, yeah.
Bingo.
Yeah, that's exactly right. How many 40-year-olds go like, well, you just want her because it's like, yeah, now do the guy's wallet. Shut up. And we have the same thing with... By the way, any questions you would like me to ask next week? I have Jillian Michaels on the show, which the funny thing is, I don't feel the need to disavow you because you've said like you're not conservative. I don't think we're in the same exact space. There's some overlap, but for the same reason, I wouldn't need to disavow. To use Ro Khanna as an example. Ro Khanna and I are not of the same stripe politically. And so we can talk about it. But any questions for the lesbian personal trainer, Jillian Michaels, who says that you declare all women want or need to be raped?
You got to press her. You got to press her on letting me come on her show. I saw you tweet that. And I really appreciated, by the way, defending what I said about that topic. If I say defended what I said about rape, it's going to sound really bad. But I appreciate what you said because
no, I am a rape defender. I am a huge rape defender.
That's part of the overlap. Yeah, that's where we agree.
Provided the man is attractive, wealthy, and not a Somali crackhead. But you didn't mention it. And that was one where I just sort of, filled in. I'm like, well, I've never seen Nick say women.
Now you know why he's demonetized. You can't say that.
Need to be raped. I assume that you were discussing, again, 62% of women have rape fantasies. And that,
you were so real for that. That was so real for you to say that.
Well, it's so repeatable that someone, like we've done study after study, this is not an outlier. And what that means is a sexually dominant man. Women's erotic literature right now is far worse than male pornography. Neither one is good, to be clear. Have you seen this book with the centaur thing? Like, that's the new trend?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's disgusting.
Yeah. It's like, look, even, as a teenager, I'm not going to lie and say they've never seen pornography. Of course, I've dabbled.
They want to be essayed by like a video game character. That's crazy.
We live in the 21st century, and it's terrible. We all fall short. Usually it's a naked man having sex with a naked lady. There's no centaur cock.
No centaurs. Yeah, well, in 50 Shades of Grey, that was like 10 years ago.
I know. And
now it's advanced. Now it's like refined. Yeah, that's where that came from. And we're all going to pretend like we don't know what's going on there. Like they don't want to be choked now and everything like that.
Yeah.
So you were real for defense. No one wants to talk about it because it's uncomfortable, but it's true.
Well, because Christians will come down on you too. And that's the problem too, is if they're like, oh, you shouldn't talk about it. It's like, so what? So we're supposed to address and combat evil without addressing it? Every now and then a lady's a little like, hey, you need to choke. Come on, guys. We all know this. So just read their books. Look at if Fabio's on the cover, read the book, go 5 pages in, someone's getting raped. And, we could argue whether it's healthy or not. It depends if the mood strikes. Is there anything else that, we do have some chat from people. Would you like to take a few chats and also let people know where's the best place for folks to find you since you are no longer deplatformed?
Yeah, I'm on X, Nick J. Fuentes, and Rumble, Nick J. Fuentes. And yeah, let's do some chats for sure.
By the way, I think you and I agree too. Elon Musk done a lot of good things. I'm glad that he, X, potential antichrist. Do we want to take some?
It's a candidate.
It's there. Definitely on the H-1B stuff. That was one where there were. I think there's a lot more overlap where I couldn't believe that I was seeing a lot of these astroturfed people saying like, yeah, H-1Bs. That's one of those things. Huge disappointment with this administration. I cannot express it enough. And I do hope that the feedback mechanism that has seemed to work in the past with Donald Trump applies here, because it's horribly ill-advised. Noodles, do you have some chats for Nick? And thanks again for taking the time.
I do. Yeah, first chat from Court070. Question for Nick. With as large of a ship that America is, how fast can we right the ship? Can it be done in 4 years?
It's a good question. No, I don't think it can be done in 4 years. And so in that way, I think maybe we agree on that. We need reasonable expectations. So I'm with you. I'm not one of these people that can never be satisfied. I'm not happy with it, like you said, even about H-1Bs, but no, the country can't be changed in 4 years. It's going to take 15.
Yeah, I would agree. It could be destroyed in 4 years. I would say that it's a lot easier to destroy than it is to build something. And that's why I think these conversations are important, no matter how much we disagree, except for people who call for the actual death. That's I say that's my standard when people go, because someone said, I can't believe you would have Nick on when Stephen Crowder, you say that you would never have someone on who calls for the death of anyone of a political stripe, because Nick has called for the deaths of all Jews. I'm like, well, by the way, I don't fully agree with some of the things that you say about the Juifs, as we call them in French, but I've never heard you call for the death of all Jews. When I'm talking about people like Hassan Piker Destiny saying political violence against my opponent, that's a line, because I had an imam on my show who called for my death, and it got pretty dicey. I was like, I'm not going to do that again. That's my standard. All right, I think that's a fair question. Next chat.
All right, next chat from Ignatum. Do you consider Islam a major threat to the U.S.?
No, and I said this on Alex Jones the other day. I really don't. And I think that, don't get me wrong, I don't want America to be Islamized. I don't like Islam. I'm not pro-Islam. I'm a Catholic. But I think that politically, that is something that is trotted out whenever people start to scrutinize Israel too much, because it's certainly more of an issue in Europe. It's far less of an issue here. And I think that is something that they try to get us to identify Muslims as our principal enemies. And by they, I mean Zionists, because that is Israel's principal adversary in the Middle East. And I don't think they have the same ranking in America as they do in Israel or in Europe, not by a long shot.
Yeah, I would say yes. And that's because I was raised, I remember the school where I went in Greenfield Park, Quebec. I watched some kids cheer when the second tower was hit. Had a very, very large percentage of Islamic students, so much so that some of my homeroom class at lunch hour was turned into a prayer room. And that's always where you and I differ is Europe, obviously, it's a bigger threat. That's why I don't want us to emulate Europe, and Canada emulates it in a lot of ways as far as the parliamentary system and as far as the sort of multicultural mosaic, to use their term. If we emulate them outside of an actual Catholic theocracy, which I know you said you don't want, you can't fill the void with nothing, and it gets filled by the more brutal religion. And that is something they're called to. That's why we have 200 million Muslims on earth who believe that violence against non-Muslims and apostates is justified. So do I think it's an imminent threat now? No. But we could be Europe if we follow their lead on that culturally, would be my case. Maybe slight difference. Next chat.
All right, next chat from Defender XX. Question for Nick. How would you properly incentivize smart people of industry and technology into political leadership? Would you want them in elected positions or appointed?
I think they should serve in the bureaucracy, because I don't really look at elected representatives as the people that are really in charge. It tends to be more the departments, the agencies, and maybe advisors. Maybe there should be some kind of new creation, but we live in a technological society. I think we need some level of technocracy. It's sad that we have these 90-year-old, you have Chuck Grassley in the Senate. What does he know about wafers? What does he know about chips? What does he know about any of this stuff? I think they should be advising Congress, and they should be in the federal bureaucracy.
I heard that answer, and I'm a child, so I heard you say wafers and chips, and I was thinking Nilla wafers and potato chips, because I'm sure he's very familiar with those. Nilla wafers, it's noon. All right, okay. Let's grab two more chats and then let Nick go on his way, because he probably wants to be with his people.
All right, next chat from Carful. Question for Stephen and Nick.
Okay.
With all the new additions to the Conservatives, what do you believe is key to prevent infighting and find our center?
Ooh. First off, I don't like saying finding our center because that sounds like eat, pray, love bullshit. But outside of that, your floor, Nick.
I guess the biggest thing is
he's going to say Christ.
We have to prioritize what matters to us. And for me, when I look at it's like you said earlier, the number one threat to the country is the demographic change. And so to me, that if we're going to find the center, that's the center. And I'm willing to compromise on other issues if we're going to stop the flow of immigrants. And I don't care what the argument is. I don't care the why, but we got to prevent them from coming in. And then I would say on top of that, the priority is we got to put America first in foreign policy. So in trade and war, we really need to fight the corruption. And so I think as long as we rank those things, we can redefine like what it is to be America first. Or not redefine that, maybe enshrine America first as the center of what it is to be right wing. And then you could say a guy like Mark Levin, he really doesn't land on the same side as us because he's not on board with that. Neither does Shapiro. So that I would prioritize, and maybe we can reconceive what it is to be on the right.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd have to ask Ben Shapiro and Mark Levin and see where they line up, because I think on some of the close-handed issues, they do. What I don't want to see happen is the only litmus test be if someone morally opposes Israel. I think that it needs to include people, this coalition, people who think we should cut all funding and we should only look out for our own interests and remove ourselves from foreign entanglements. But those people can also say, I hate Hamas, and I think that that Islam as a prescription is a greater threat to the West. We may disagree, as long as I think the important closed-handed issues, I would say.
Islam would be the death of the West, unquestionably. It's just, like, unquestionably, Islam would kill the West, 100%, no doubt about that. We're seeing that in real time. But it's more so, and something you always have to be mindful of, but you have to also understand when it's being cynically employed as well for political purposes.
Immigration, absolutely.
By people with a nefarious agenda.
And pragmatically. People say demographic change and they go, great replacement theory. I'm talking about like this country will cease to be. That is the thing. Right. And you combine the mass illegal immigration, the mass H-1Bs with the census rule change. That is huge that people have overlooked. I mean, I will say for all the flaws of this administration, I don't know anywhere else where you get a Tom Homan. Big fan. Had him on the show. That's a guy who really is uncompromising, and he talks about the moral imperative to deport everybody. He made it on this show. He said once they've seen what I've seen, they would. So immigration, I would say First Amendment. I would say Second Amendment. I would say the idea of the destruction of the family. We have to end. Anyone who pursues that can't be a part of it, and then see what kind of a coalition we can build on that. But I don't go along with people who go, we can compromise on all these other fundamentals, provided it's just immigration or Israel, because you can find some people who are to the left of everything on those. They can't be in the coalition if they're not on board with a strong immigration plan. But I think we can determine the close-handed issues versus open-handed issues, like you're talking about, intervention, for example, tariffs. I think people could be pro or against tariffs. I am pro these tariffs, but I wouldn't exclude them. Okay, final chat.
All right, final chat from Elenoism. Question for Nick. You say that bombing the Middle East for Israel is not America first, but you also say you're against bombing Venezuela for killing Americans with fentanyl. Care to elaborate?
Yeah, well, as far as Venezuela is concerned, I'm much more in favor of intervention there than in the Middle East. And I've gotten a little flack for that because I do believe that the Western Hemisphere is our domain. It's our sphere of influence. That's the Monroe Doctrine for 200 years. As far as the boats are concerned, though, have I said I'm against that? I guess what I don't like
my impression was that, just to be clear, my impression of you, tell me if I'm wrong, was that you said, like limited parameters, we have to define objectives clearly, but you supported that more than other interventions. You could 100%. Be persuaded. That was my impression of your view. Am I wrong?
100%. Yeah, okay. 100%. The only thing with the drug boats is it's a lie that Venezuela is responsible for a lot of the drug trafficking. That's just a pretext. And I don't even mind that. Like you said, I could be persuaded to support an operation as long as it's clearly defined, effective. If it works, I like it. Like if they're able to get Maduro out and we get a good guy in, if they could do that and they know they're in the NSC, then sure. But I'm very hesitant because regime change doesn't have a good track record. But we do have legitimate interests here, so I'm not opposed to intervention on principle.
Yeah, I would say I'm not opposed to intervention. I think the principle is it in America's interests and how necessary is it? Where we would differ is I definitely think that Iran is the case. I understand they also with Israel. I know that your view of Iran is different. You think that there's sort of a safeguard against Israel and nuclear Iran. I think that there's a reason that no nation around them, including people who would be more in line with them, want them to have nukes ever, ever, ever. But I think that the principles, now we may disagree on the target or the place. I think first off, the principle is to be very, very hesitant to do it. And it goes through the filter. Is this serving America's interests? Because libertarians who act like there's no intervention that ever serves America's interests, well, that's silly.
Yeah, I'm not a libertarian. I'm not even a non-interventionist. I'm with you. It's just got to be America first, and then we could do whatever we want.
Yeah, well, yes, pretty much. And Venezuela, yeah, you're right. I don't think a lot of people are being killed from fentanyl from Venezuela. But I will say, like, I also, again, culturally take an interest in, like, remember Code Pink? Remember them? Code Pink,
the name rings a bell. Who
exactly.
are they again?
They were the yappy bitches who would show up at anything war. You know, George Bush, it was Code Pink everywhere. No war for oil. Disappeared with Barack Obama on the drone strikes. Then kind of reappeared.
Yeah.
That's you're just like, well, hold on a second. Where did they go for all this time? But
right.
I also look
NGOs.
at these Venezuelan drug boat busters, and by the way, they're also largely China-funded, Code Pink. So that always takes place. I would argue that China's probably the primary threat, or not argue. I think we're probably on the same page. But these are one of those stories where culturally, when you tune in, and that's why we always have CNN on live every day.
Yeah, why is Jeffrey Sachs always going on Chinese TV talking about how China is not a threat to the West and they don't want beef with us? There's something off about that. That's fishy, because if you're a geopolitical realist, you know beyond a shadow of a doubt that China is 100% going to be the greatest adversary to our geopolitical interests for like the next 100 years, 50 years at the least, 50 years minimum. So I don't know what Jeffrey Sachs' whole thing is. It's very fishy. I don't like it.
Nothing up my sleeve, so people know we're live, because you and I both know a lot of people say they're live. They're not live in this industry. Right. They go, and these people who were killed in this war crime. I go, well, hold on a second, war crime. Drug runners in the middle of the ocean on cigar boats with 4 outboard motors, no fishing equipment to be seen. There could not possibly be collateral damage. And then I go, oh, okay. It's not about a war crime, because you would say, look at the women and children. Now you're saying, look at the drug runners on drug boats. And that, to me, highlights that, again, the left hates the United States of America, or they wouldn't be making a big deal out of drug runners in Venezuelan cigar boats.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, that they're defending the worst of the worst this year. It's like, don't deport criminals, don't blow up criminals, don't arrest people that are stabbing people in the neck. So I'm with you on that. And as far as Venezuela is concerned, even Iran, like, I think a case could be made about Iran. That's a whole other topic.
I know we're wrapping it up, but yes.
Yeah, but I don't know that I 100% even agree with Dave Smith on this. Like, I get where you're coming from. I'm not in favor of proliferation. I just have maybe a different prescription for how to solve it. But sure. I think we're fairly aligned on foreign policy.
Yeah, I think pretty close, or at least in principle. And then that's where coalition matters, because you go, okay. Are we on these? Okay, now let's look at these specifics. And you're going to have disagreements on specifics. But I don't think anyone can be let in the door as disagreements on these foundational. And I don't want to say principles, because it sounds like old school conservative, but I mean, non-negotiables is what I mean. Like someone going, oh, we disagree on the we agree on the specifics, but I want to take away all your guns and ban everyone for hate speech. You know, like a Pam Bondi. I don't think she should be in this. Well, all right, Nick, I appreciate you taking the time. Want to say, hopefully, thought fair, productive. I think it was pretty friendly. We disagreed, but I'm happy about it.
Yeah, totally. Great conversation. Great getting to meet you. Absolutely fair. And I believe in conversations like these. And I thank you for, I know you're going to get flack for it. I thank you for giving me the platform and the opportunity. So it's good to finally speak with you.
Oh, absolutely. And hopefully, that's why I say I give you the floor, because I don't want anything to happen like what happened after with Tucker. I won't do it, and I don't want any drive-bys after. That's how this works, because people try and stir the controversy machine. I think this had a beginning, middle, and end, and Tucker was really shitty with what he did. Like, here's the thing: whether I agree with him on some issues or you on some, it's just so bitchy to do that. Once you're gone, you have my word. I won't be doing that.
Right.
Yeah, and likewise, I'll be singing your praises. I'm number one. I'm a Mug Club guy now.
Okay, well, don't go that far because we're.
I endorse you completely.
Yeah, no. It's just like when you think Steven Crowder, think Nick Fuentes. Get the fuck out of here! All right. Well, if I don't see you, Merry Christmas, Nick. Thank you for taking the time. Be well.
Thanks, man. Merry Christmas.
Nick Fuentes, everybody.
Yeah, that was good. That was really, really good. That was, let me switch back to full screen here. I will say, like, that was a solid interview. I didn't add that much commentary, and a lot of the other reactions that I do, I tend to add a lot more commentary. I didn't on that one because they were saying, they were hitting a lot of the important points. H-1Bs, Trump, visas, the left, Nick's controversial statements, Stalin, Tucker Carlson, Ben Shapiro, all that good stuff. And then towards like the last 40 minutes, they kind of started cracking a lot of jokes. There wasn't a lot to really go through there. But overall, I thought it was good. And I think that this is how a lot of these interviews should be. It should be contentious. It should be political. It's not just like an interview, a discussion, we're going back and forth. It should be political. That's the point of politics. Be political, debate the politics, debate the policies, debate the cultural perspectives. Like, that's what politics is. You get into the dirt and you butt heads and figure these things out. Like, that's what politics is for. It's not like, oh, I'm going to invite you on my podcast and glaze you for 3 hours. Like, that's not, what does that really accomplish? What does that really change, right? Politics is about, we fight on the ideas and see who wins out and brings creates a larger audience for themselves. That's the first thing I want to say. Second thing I'll say is, we have to look at the political implications of this. So Steven Crowder, Nick Fuentes, they've kind of been like a cold feud for 4 or 5 months now. It could be longer than that, but I have heard Nick on his own show go off on Steven Crowder for not naming him explicitly and bringing him onto his show, but he'll talk about him and criticize him when Nick is not there. Well, they got it out of the way. They had a fair, I would say, productive conversation. And I'll just say this. I think that it's a win for Steven, and I think it's a win for Fuentes as well. I think it's a win for Steven Crowder because Steven Crowder didn't get railroaded on any of those points. The only thing I think Steven Crowder really might have lost on is some of the stuff with Trump. I think Nick got him there. I think the whole thing about Trump not being a tool for the establishment at this point and working with Silicon Valley, Elon Musk, Wall Street, the special interests, I think it's at this point it's pretty much fact at this point that Trump has capitulated. And I think that Nick laid that case out perfectly, and I think that his case was a superior one over Crowder's attempted defense of Trump. I think his attack was more compelling than Crowder's defense. But I think overall, I think that this was good for Crowder because it gives him the ability to present himself as like a stalwart in the conservative movement. And you can tell there is ideological differences. Fuentes is a reactionary. Fuentes is more of a polemic. Fuentes is more, what's the word? Maybe more authoritarian leaning. And then you can see that Crowder is like, no, he's more of a like actual conservative. And the reason why these debates are important to have is because you need to actually understand the ideological differences between a Crowder and a Fuentes. Fuentes is like a nationalist, strong government kind of guy, authoritarian, top-down kind of guy. And Crowder is obviously more of like an independent, individual responsibility, liberty, conservative, Second Amendment kind of guy. Free markets, that's his sort of thing. So you can see like a clear ideological distinction between the two. And that's why these conversations are so important to have, because if everybody's out here assuming that, especially the left, if they're saying Fuentes is the next, he's the next leader of the right wing. He's going to be the one that all these conservatives fall in line for. It's like, no, that's not actually accurate. You can see clear disagreements between Crowder and Fuentes on various things. And I think that having these conversations really elucidates that. So I'll say this. I think it's good for Crowder because it gives Crowder the opportunity to really establish himself as somebody who is like a principled conservative who does have like a backbone and is willing to debate one-on-one with these more reactionary, right-wing, authoritarian figures like a Fuentes or like a Tucker Carlson. And so I think it works in his favor in that regard. I also think it works for Nick Fuentes because with Fuentes, it is now you can see Fuentes actually can hold his own in a real, one-on-one with a conservative figure. He can hold his own. He can lay out his case. He can make the arguments. And a lot of them are compelling. So I think that it works it works out for both of them. It's a win-win, these kinds of debates. And it also works for Fuentes because it destigmatizes him. The more he goes on these podcasts, the more he shows that he can engage in good faith and that you can actually have legitimate disagreements with Fuentes ideologically without him unraveling or losing his cool or cutting you off or getting anxious or riled up. Like he can actually, he's reasonable. So it works out for him because he presents himself as reasonable. He gets exposure to a larger audience. He sharpens his debate skills and he demonstrates he has the capacity to engage in a kind of like real intellectual one-on-one with somebody who is of a different political stripe. And then I think it works for Crowder because with Crowder, it's like he establishes himself as a conservative figure. He shows that he's willing to talk to people who are to his right, who he has real legitimate disagreements with. It demonstrates that he has the ability to kind of jockey with other people about ideological differences. And it establishes him as somebody who is like, despite being more establishment, despite being maybe more conservative, Steven Crowder is still, regardless, a good faith actor and an actual cultural and, political force. So I think it works out in both their favors in the long run. That's my take on all of this. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed that video. I will be back next Tuesday. I will record a reaction to the conversation between Nick Fuentes and Piers Morgan. I don't know if it's going to be a panel episode. I'm assuming it's just going to be a one-on-one. I don't know if it's a panel. That might be interesting, but I'm hoping it's just a one-on-one. So I'll be back Tuesday, and I will record my reaction to that. I probably won't do it live. I'll probably pre-record it, but either way, it's going to be a good one. So stay tuned for that. And that's it. So I hope you guys enjoyed this reaction. If you did, please like, subscribe, leave a comment, share the video. And until further ado, I'm out.